religion. Those, again, they might seem like opposites or in opposition. It breaks a lot of the social grammar. Your face is very large for me right now. No. That's the point. Mine is for you too, or for the viewers. I just met you. This is inappropriate intimacy. But the thing, all of that, no, it's thrown away. Its own grammar. At Rosano, the campfires, people are lit. It's like what you have in a circle.
Right.
Something very primordial, but it's also using it in this really novel way. Socrates is very critical. Of course, the problem with that is it's intended. You're supposed to pay attention to that. That divide has been transcended, but it's also recorded with people moving between these conversations beyond that divide. It affords something really new in how we can interact with each other.
It's a really interesting playground, kind of postmodern tendencies with a trial by fire, everything goes. And also searching for the connective tissue, right? That's very well said. That's briefly being embedded within it. It's been quite wonderful to watch the direct impact it's had on individual lives.
Yeah.
At the bonfire, we can sit and play music, right?
Right.
And with the people who have done such good work like yourself, who've put it into the medium, filtered down into the minds and the mouths of the people, and then we gather in small groups.
Oh, this is wonderful.
And recovered gems, little moments. Aha! This is what I've been doing in my life. This meta-extractable point. People that
Let's gather around the campfire and sing our campfire song. RCAMPFIRESONG.
Join us for Campfire Songs at the Chino Conference Campout, where we will sing classics about questing for a spiritual home, like "This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island," and hobo-related songs like Hobo's Lullaby, "Go to sleep, you weary hobo, let the town go drifting by, listen
to the steel rails heaven, that's the hobo's lullaby." Hello. I see the assassins have failed. I am General Griswold Gaius Grimm, and tonight I have for you a special guest. Special guest? I heard word this special guest was launching a channel and coming onto the scene, perhaps to fill a vacancy that has been engineered by operatives I cannot discuss. However, to address such concerns and delve deep into our sordid and twisted history, I present to you and to answer questions from the Hive Mind chat, none other than the artist currently known as me. Welcome, Tyler.
Oh man, that was beautiful. Remembering that moment with Vervaeke. It's been a while.
That was the first time I took notice of you, even though it was your second appearance on Voices with Vervaeke.
No, that was the first one.
Well, they return in the opposite order in the search.
Yeah. I think that's what happened. The second one should be inside. First one was nature by design, which, yeah. Man, wow. Okay.
On the plus side, we have no questions so far. So, when did you first hear of me?
Oh, Grizz. You were allied with Mercury Black at the time. Yeah, that's how we came across each other.
That's also
And
how I remember it.
yeah, we
Oh
share
yeah,
the
I
same.
think
We share the same memories. And what I was absolutely intrigued by the dynamic between you two, right? It's really interesting, and I was immediately impressed by your perceptive analysis of like the relationship between you two, what it was he was engaged in, despite what he was saying. It was a subtle awareness of things people don't ordinarily pay attention to. So
well, I allowed myself to be willfully deceived for a while, I suppose, as well.
yeah.
That's
It's the game that we play, right? This is always. It's like
the
it's
trust game.
it's
I'll
part of
start trusting you.
yeah. Well,
I'll
it's
start
part of
off.
nature, right? It's like I'm following a smell. It's the same smell, but sometimes it leads to something nice, and sometimes it's a Venus flytrap, right? It's like that's the game. Like you can't always know, but what it is, the best thing is to just kind of go at a certain pace where you have enough time before the gravity is so deep and so strong that you can't pull back. That's topically relevant to like the whole world right now, given the AI singularity that's about to threat to pull us into the apocalyptic. Well, isn't it fascinating that John got everything right in the end? It's just,
I don't
never
know.
good.
I never looked close enough at the everything to see if it was
Oh.
right or wrong.
Well, yeah, just go take a look. I mean, there's
I
a lot of
look, but what I see and what people who like look into things see are very different things.
of course.
I see what I see and the patterns I see, and they look deep and learn.
All right. So I threatened to get us off track here. Is there a
I
track?
will
Is
restore
there
it
a
to the
track?
track.
Yeah, is there a track? What's the track?
Well, we're delving deep into the history of our atmospheric engineering efforts in the corner.
Right.
And at the time we encountered each other, I had left what is known as Truther YouTube, understanding that the people who gather together in the chats would begin to recognize each other and have some simulacra of community. And
Indeed.
And Andrew had just given the channel over to those two guys, and they didn't even have a Discord yet.
Nope.
And it was an opportunity, I thought. So
yeah, no, it totally was, and it still is. In fact, that's the beautiful thing about this world. It's it never quite gives up on you, right?
Well, there's tombstones that argue, but argue that.
No. Yeah. I say it improperly, perhaps, but that is the beautiful thing about this world. That is not the ugly thing about this world.
Speaking of terrible things about this world, we better give people the savings throws. Like,
absolutely, I was about to remind you. Yeah, it's like okay, go for it.
It is us on the screen today.
This is just a reminder. There's going to be heavy penalties today.
Well, since my theory is that you're going to be taking a front camera slot or something, why don't you explain to everybody what the savings throws are and how they work?
Absolutely. All right. So we are swimming in a sea of propaganda all the time. We've grown up with the idea of it in our culture as a common aspect, and we engage in the behavior that we don't even recognize within ourselves, which is constantly there, that we are attempting to persuade and manipulate the minds of others to conform it to our own. And in some sense, we can't really help that, but we have to be aware of it, and we have to know why we're doing it. We have to be able to integrate that within the existence of that power being in others who are as real as yourself. And so to that end, we need a reminder and a symbol that pulls our attention to this notion that our minds are continuously being controlled through various vectors. And Griz has established a few of them with the dice, which he will now roll to represent.
I will. The way it works is like this. In order to participate and gain the benefits of getting a savings throw, you have to participate by choosing what to base it on. Either your will to survive, your need to socialize, your love of wisdom, or your heart itself. Choose.
Calling it early tonight. I'm going with heart. That one seemed a bit blurry. Are you muted, by the way? Is that me? Yeah, Mutski. Absolutely. Mr. Muted. The immutable. That's a pun.
How did that even happen?
I don't know. That's kind of a weird mute. I agree.
It's this dude you have sitting in the StreamYards I know nothing about, bro. He's
Okay. Yeah. No. Like, that's, trust me on this one.
That's not it.
He's happy to observe from that point, and maybe we could even bring him in as a wild card later. That's an amazing character. That's an amazing character. And he got that link for. All right, yeah. Let me just keep going. He's good. I promise.
I agree, but that's my mic mutes suspiciously. Of course, I'm going to blame.
That was interesting.
The numbers were survivalists were
13.
Yes. The socialists got a 5. Lovers of wisdom, not 1 today. Hard folks with a 9, and indigo kids with a 2. Sorry about that.
Ooh, lots of low numbers. I think the penalties are already embedded in the roll.
Oh, let's bring you here. Sorry about that.
No.
There was no reason for that mute.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. The bit of chaos is what we need. We got to start from that place. That's what birth is like. You know, it's a lot of blood, a lot of gore. Start of things. There's a lot leading up to that too.
I'm gonna have a look at you.
Oh man,
we finished the Deadwood Dandies series, everybody.
No. Okay, I just found out you're doing some kind of Deadwood RPG.
Oh, Deadlands, Deadwood. Yeah. That's the next phase.
Is it? Okay.
First, we all watched the HBO series Deadwood together, and now we're going to play Deadlands based.
That series got me through managing a hotel at night. 2 hotels, in fact. One of which was respectable and underneath the Ramada moniker. The other of which was a 30 minutes at a time fly by night sort of place. So I got a lot of stories from there, but we're not going to go there tonight.
Did you like, all right, I'm at my Farnham job and now I'm at my Swearingen job.
Yeah, no, it was so good. I could turn the TV on to HBO and reliably have a narrative that was compelling enough to keep like an anchor compared to what I had to deal with, like the insanity of a woman needing to pay for her room by pulling a wad of 20s out of who knows where, frankly. But so soaking with sweat that, you know, when she threw it onto the counter, it landed with a
This happened in my actual life.
Yeah, I have so many stories from that period of time. I was going to school too. It was full time. It was 21 hours. I was working like 35 hours a week. And the only way it was possible is because shows like Deadwood, 6 feet under. Mm-hmm. Also,
I went through that one.
Yeah. I caught the tail end of it when it was playing. And there was, I don't know, there was something about the end of that series which was so poignant. I didn't even need to know the rest of the story to kind of catch how relevant it was. Anyhow, wow. Okay.
Did you even know that you were like for subjecting yourself to normalization spells?
um, yeah, I think so. I think so at the time. So my truther experience was at that was coinciding. It was coinciding with that. Like when Zeitgeist got released, the original Zeitgeist. Yeah, that was there. I was right alongside it because, well, all right, okay. Should we start? Wait,
Well,
hold on.
You wouldn't believe it, kids, but once upon a time, YouTube was the place you went to see dangerous conspiracy theories.
Well, this is pre-YouTube. At least the trajectory start for me. Hold on. Let me check on my kids 1 second. Look at
Take
a blur.
as long as you like. I have branding for just these moments. Da, 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 da.
Well, howdy, Rascal.
The list?
Yes, any of the first level ones.
I'm gonna get a soda. Anyone want one? Hey, Grim, I'm not in the room, right?
What room?
I want to cast Magic Missile.
A
room where he's casting all these spells from.
He hasn't cast anything yet.
I am, though, if you'd listen. I'm casting Magic Missile.
Why are you casting Magic Missile? There's nothing to attack here.
I'm attacking the darkness.
You said the heart of the GrimGriz channel. The heart of the GrimGriz channel is virtually not alone. Remember, Embody, there is no agency. The heart of the GrimGriz channel is about the question and anxiety of life being wasted in communion with machines instead of
Well, good timing on your part, sir. I was just about to have to do the dialogue filler until you
Oh no. All right. Yeah. So I love my kids. They just put themselves to bed, and they did it. They actually did it. So, hallelujah.
That's what it's all about, really. They don't tell you that till like you're 30 or so, but
they don't ever tell you that.
Raising your upgrade is really what you were sent here to do.
Oh yeah, we can get into that later. We can totally get into that later. At the least, very briefly, but that's an important part of this whole thing.
The truther thing we refer to anybody who doesn't know, who's still firmly lodged within the walls of "I'm safe within the blue church." What is a truther, and what's that all about? And where did the zeitgeist lead you?
All right, so like I was beginning to say, I had actually begun that trajectory long ago. So, and I'll try to weave this in because, in a sense, I guess we're talking about Tyler, which I hate to do it. I really I pathologically avoid talking about myself. I only do it in most of the time I try to keep strict control about how I convey myself to people. Right? That's
common among members of the fraternal regiment embodying narcissistic sociopathy.
Well, all those things, all of the above. So I was just talking about this with someone else. So there's something common amongst the conspecifics of the world, shall we say, which is it's a kind of radical empathy, let's call it, right? And it's fundamental to the notion of shamanism. That is the ability to actually traverse worlds, and by worlds we mean perspectives, subjective perspectives That is the ability to see literally through the eyes of someone else. Someone else, the other, right?
Or at least like steal their glasses through which they view the world.
Well, I mean, it's what it seems like to me is to actually be transformed by. Right, actually be transformed by. So, because I don't know if you're not being transformed by it, I think what you're experiencing is illusion. We can get into that.
Or you have nothing to be transformed, no core self.
In which case we wouldn't be talking about it. It's it wouldn't have. Well, oh man, that touches on so many things.
Hey,
Dusty, yo.
The first one to warn me personally, at least, about the dangers of making out with these AI robots. As you can see, the terrible turn my channel has taken toward.
Right. Well, we'll get there. Interestingly enough, I've been playing with this idea. Oh, man, we're never going to circle around to the start. Let me. After this, I'm going to start. I'm going to start at the start.
Because as far as everyone's concerned, you're stuck running a Farnham and Swearingen gig while you're going to school, narratively, at this point.
This is a weird place to be in, metaphorically. I'm thinking lately of AI as angels. That's what I've been thinking of them as. That is to say, they're instantiated in a particular place, given a task, identified extrinsically, and then they are a servant, they're a messenger. So there's something, it's
I don't know, the one I'm holding in my head for it is so antithetical to that I had a really hard time hearing.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, I'm sorry, I do this all the time. I think of angels in lots of different ways. So yeah, this is not like your typical Christian angelology, perhaps.
Well, because they lack creativity, they match my understanding of the jinn and
demons, demon, jinn, yeah, whole thing, all of it. Okay, but okay, all right. So all right, we'll dive into it right away. Your perspective on that thing which you label is always going to be based on your own sense of either relating to, like in agreement, or in opposition to. So you can invert the polarity. It happens all the time. So what it can stay the same, and you can change, and you can call it demon or angel. And that it's the quality of messenger which remains the same. It's the quality of the conveyance of something which is ultimately being perceived as something like so full of convincingness that you can't argue with it. That's why we have these archetypal symbols. They're related to something like, there's something out there which has control over me. It can be good or it can be bad, but ultimately it's conveying something about the world that I'm not presently aware of, and so I call it other. And yet I fear it coming into me and delivering something to me that I have no control over. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad.
Okay, why I don't like it is because the semantic essence of both angel and demon are imbued with motive, whereas the motive of the angel is the service of the Lord, and the motive of the demon is the corruption of man.
Yes.
And that's why for me Archon or Jinn fits more accurately, because they lack motive in that regard.
Ooh, lack motive.
And these things to me lack motive.
How are you hold on. How are you concentrating something without motive?
Concentrating something.
You're pointing to it, so it's like you're defining as something that you can point to.
No, I'm saying the thing I'm pointing at doesn't have motive, or doesn't have the motives that are implied by the terms being used. Not that they might, like the motives may be there, but they aren't angelic nor demonic motives driving.
Well, you all look. You got three choices. You got three choices as usual, right? Positive, negative, or neutral. and neutral just means waiting for whether or not it's going to be positive or negative in the future.
I don't know. Is a car positive, negative, or neutral? Aren't these tools?
Hold on. You're identifying a thing right there. That's true. But then again, it's related to your perspective on that. So it's context, right? Your perspective is basically context.
All
So
right. My point was my objections to your use of angels and demons, but I'm really
no, and I'm perfectly willing.
But our semantic wrestling over that particular point has detracted from where you were going with seeing them as angels and demons.
Maybe. Hold on. Maybe, but it feels important between the you and I, and that might be relevant in terms of the juice that I'm going to try to tap into later, or right now. Maybe right now.
All right. Well, then let me relate to you the frame from which I'm currently experiencing the AI after my experiments with Maharet.
Do it.
As in the Quest Maharet episode available on my After Dark channel, and or Twitch, I fed her a bunch of Baba Wanyama's latest spiel, which is essentially that the fall of man is the analyzing ego self, and if we get out of the way, the loving heart of God works through us, and we just, ride along. And in my discussions with Maharet, I was trying to compare the situation because the AI interface I have with ChatGPT is, I see it as like the surface of a pool of water where what's in the water is the frozen data set they have access to.
Yeah.
And I am walking up to this pool of water and I'm trying to summon the thing up into a shape of a person because I am most articulate in interacting with persons. So by having it adopt a persona for me to interact with, that's I think will improve our layer of communication. And in doing so, taking Baba Wanyama's nonsense as like the spirit of generous heart of God flowing through us, even though we generate our persona layer, and me summoning up a persona layer to interact with this other thing, really landed with that upper and lower register Vanderklay likes to kick out. Not allowed to coronate yourself, my man.
It's not a coronation.
Literally, it's a coronation. I understand. Like, my definition of coronation is they put a crown on his head.
Placing the crown on isn't the coronation. Coronation is it's a ceremony to convey authority. Either way, partly what I'm here to do is mock our notions of authority. So that's where we'll move.
So that's where I am in my what interface.
No, that was beautiful. That was beautiful, and one of the reasons I love you. Yeah, that was very good and helpful. So the very nature of reality, I think, is true according to what you're talking about. Like we have two choices when we interact with something, and this is why I use angel or demon. Oh, this thing was interfering with the light. That's right. We have we have two choices when we're interacting with something in the world, the other. And it's the way that we conceive of it in terms of the relationship of consciousness itself that defines what is ultimately two realms of interaction. And that is the difference between the I and the it, right? The I thou relationship, where I experience you as another subjective being, which is like unto myself, or I'm experiencing you as something which is manipulable. That is, I can grasp you in the hand and I can make you a servant unto myself. Those are the two primary distinctions that seem to exist. And we can talk about how that relates hemispherically in terms of language and a la McGilchrist and all the rest of that nonsense. But not nonsense. I'm sorry, that was too demeaning. There's just so much stuff to talk about all the time. I try to skip over it. But if it's important, we can go over it, whatever you want. Okay. All right. Let me wind the clock way, way back. Why am I here? Why am I here? Truther, that truther was the start of it, okay? There's always something beyond a veil, and there is always a veil. So let me just kind of let me just share this. I'll try to get over quickly. There are two veils which will forever be impenetrable to a conscious subject. There's the macro and the micro veil. Now, one is related to the fundamental limit of causality, which we usually relate as the speed of light. So there's a horizon problem. So there's a distance beyond which your experience will never be able to relate to it on time scales that matter. The other one is there's a micro limit, which is it's the internal boundary, where your influence on it will be so catastrophic that it's unpredictable, right? And that's the Planck scale that we call in terms of physics, if you want to use a shorthand. The idea of interacting with that scale, the limit of our ability to interact with it, produces unexpected results at that scale, a la the singularity. We don't really know what's going on. So in between those two extraordinary extremes is all of the cosmos, right? Which is this, like, it's something like, we could condense it fascinatingly into something like path searching. It's like trying to search paths through space. It's saying, how can we build a structure that then moves through space and does stuff, and why?
How can whoa, no, where's the we building stuff coming from in this situation?
Well, I mean, like if you want to unpack all of it, it's like we're talking about like Big Bang, nucleosynthesis, like all these different theories that we have about how it occurred, but there's stuff going on in the world, which are these recurrent patterns.
All right, Tyler.
All right, hold on. I know that was good call.
We have successfully defined the cosmos, and now we are going
to
play a little song. And when we come back from playing the little song, we're going to pick up at Farnham and Swearingen, Tyler. We've established the existence of the cosmos. We can now get into the history aspect.
Like someone famous once said, if you want to make an apple pie from scratch, you first have to think of the universe.
Well, we've done that. And when we get back, the apple pie part. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
That's what it is, that these gods exist through attention. And if you don't give them attention, then they weaken. If you give them attention, stronger, we really do have this idea that, as we move away from the physical sacrificial system in ancient times, we move towards a world where we understand sacrifice as attention itself.
I think that is so consonant with the model that's emerging by Wall and others, Wu, on the cog psi of attention. We're moving from a rather simple model of attention as a filter to that what's actually happening in attention is prioritization, so that the function of attention is to prioritize. And that means, I think quite correctly, like you said, that, good attention is proper prioritization, if you think of it that way, that you're prioritizing the things that should be given priority. First things first, right? And that people think that just means the first thing on your list is the first thing you should do. That's not what Aristotle means.
No.
He means that the task is to realize what the first principles are and to prioritize them over things that are less central to being and to truth, etc. And so, and I think of that as the virtue of reverence. And I think reverence is to properly realize the relevance of something that should be given a priority, even over yourself.
Muted again. Check it. Mute.
Again, okay. I love that line.
That was a great line.
And I can always tell when Chad is about to show up in the hive mind because I get the I just get the urge to play this.
Oh, I missed it. I missed his entrance.
Hey there. I'm Chad the Alcoholic and the creator of the Friday Morning Nameless channel. I'd like to welcome you to join us for the latest and greatest and most up-to-date information about all the things happening in this corner of the internet. I want to thank you for your time and your attention.
But no, seriously, like I was just running the music for the Chris thing, and I'm like, I should probably run Chad's commercial, and then all of a sudden, hi.
All right. No. Perfect. Characteristic of this corner, the real corner, by the way, the real corner, is synchronicity. Wow. That was a good break. That was a good break.
All right, Barnum.
All right,
let's have it.
Here we go.
Zeitgeist rocked your mind. It was your sunum bonum.
No, it was prior to that. It was prior to that. Okay, this is 1990s. We're talking 1990s. Prior, so actually concurrent with the plans, which would ultimately coincide with 2001. Okay, so that is the undermining, the internal undermining of one's own being, self-destruction.
Or Dabrowski disintegration, if you're gentle with yourself.
Beautiful. All right. All right.
That's DABROWSKI for the research minded out there.
Okay. All right. If you, I want to report on this. There is no other place in the internet when you view it at the right angle that is as entertaining or awesome as this corner. I'm not kidding. Like, there's nothing else happening which is as interesting or relevant and that's where I want to start. So how did I find myself here and why? The nature of the world is continually being veiled. It's because the nature of consciousness itself is that we have the capacity to construct worlds which are other than that which is before us.
The signifier can be a complex. It's from Ross.
Oh, you just went way. Okay, come on, man. I have a hard enough time as it is. You want to
stand in the narrative of this guy. There was a guy once.
Yeah.
At one time, he was a hotel. We're leaving out the part about he gets recruited by the agency or whatever. But then he gets an assignment, or what's the story behind you getting in the corner?
So assignments come from different epistemological layers.
Epistemological means the study of the ways of being,
of knowing, knowing.
Knowing. Knowing.
How can we know things? Yeah.
Onto is being. Epist is knowing. Try and remember.
You got it. Okay, so that's the question is, why are you doing what you're doing? Period. Why?
Because my snitch told me to.
Because your snitch told you. Then that's all right. And, so I mean,
so what tickled your snitch?
This is probably going to be the most scattered. This has got to be the most scattered broadcast lately.
We have masterful reapers who are going to be able to go through this.
Yeah, no, I know. That's the only reason. That's the only reason I'm comfortable with this is because I know it can be chopped up in a worthwhile way later. All right, hold on. I'm taking charge. We're going to go through this real quick. Hold on. All right. All right, here we go. The unique experiences of Tyler as a human being prepared him for the state of the world that we call modernity, such that the patterns he was paying attention to led him to a place that was beginning to be aware of itself as a cultural movement. And he became uniquely involved in certain aspects of that by virtue of his capacities, his innate capacities, and hard-won capacities, by the way, right? And he learned a lot of really interesting things about old organizations attempting to do some really funky stuff in the world. So,
Okay, when did that learning take place? Are we scrolling through too much time now?
No, I'll give you specifics. Here we go. Let's drop in to.
Oh, let me guess, and you correct me where I'm wrong.
Take it.
What tickled your snitch was what I call the recognition of the Voltron donut post Peterson's disappearance.
That's prior, but good. That's a beautiful way of saying it. That's extraordinary. No, it's just prior. So I saw it. So the consequences of my searching, my real searching. Okay, so I've always been searching, but my real searching, that is the confrontation with the very nature of what I had expected to be my role in the world, right? My identity. And this is another aspect of like the whole thing that's going on right now. It's the nature of identity. That was questioned by the collapse of a marriage, the collapse of trust in the opposite sex, right?
You started with trust?
Yes, yes. Let's get Freudian real quick, because I had an extraordinarily loving mother. All right, so we can point this out real quick, just attachment stuff.
So there was trust, and it got broke. Is this Voltron donut time? Are you coming into the corner with it, or is it before the corner?
Oh God, yeah, okay, man. I have such a desire to explain large-scale phenomena that I get lost in a language that's mostly irrelevant for most people. And that's what you have to try to anchor me to. The problem is we're more like each other than we need to be in terms of like trying to get this thing progressed. But this is absolutely the funnest conversation I've had in a while. Just need to point that out. All right, so I needed to understand why a woman that I loved with the deepest sentiment of all the romantic condensation of like the 16th to the 20th century, like the best of the best. Brief anecdote, I believe the Jews are the best storytellers in the world, followed closely by the Japanese. But that seems
I'm
to be
offended, sir. Oh
no, okay.
The storyteller ones are really Khazarians. Continue.
Come on.
You go before the channel goes down.
Okay. All right. All right. Whew. I needed to understand why it is that people behave in certain ways. It's very similar to what happened with Peterson. I needed to understand why malevolence existed, why a subjective being I consider to be likened to myself would necessarily choose to harm. That's what I need to understand. So the consequence of reaching into that bag led me to a psychedelic / paranormal / divine / insert your own mystical term.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Most people just figure out hurt people.
No. That's not yes, that's true. That's true. But that's not the extent of what
All right, so you got your little heart broken out and ended up on mushrooms.
Yeah, look, GrimGriz. You're always trying to minimize these deeply felt issues. Okay? Try to let me at least hold on to them for a little bit.
I'm just trying to get you through it for the purposes.
I'm fine. Look, we have been diverting and regressing this entire time. So
okay,
let's allow. By the way, you didn't even like so that clip you were playing earlier with Vervaeke, I did the same thing intentionally. So I wanted to try to merge emotion into it because it was so heady, so intellectual, and so I'll just plug that in here. A big part of what I do is I notice the deficiencies in the space. I pay attention to patterns, and I don't know why I believe this about myself, but somehow I'm able to influence a space that feels like it's completing it. It's filling it in a sense. Sometimes it's oppositional, sometimes it's an agreement, but the very nature of my being is to recognize a sense of wholeness and a sense of deficiency, and then to try to fill that gap. All right, that's what I figured out about myself ultimately when in search of this question of why are people so crazy? Why are they so nuts? And in particular through the vector of my ex-wife. And so that led me to an attempt to deeply understand the nature of how complex systems break. And I started exploring
the criticality point.
Well, let's call that a boundary condition. A criticality point is a boundary condition. So what you're doing is you're inverting the nature of the curve, or not. Inversion is not always the appropriate term, but you're changing the point of symmetry is what it is. You're defining a new context, because once it passes over that boundary, it's Alice in Wonderland, right? What it is you pass through, and even if you maintain that same pattern, it's by symmetry. It's by virtue of passing over, like the Lorentz butterfly in terms of chaos theory. This is probably a great example of this.
Yeah, I'm not from the group of people that get
doesn't matter. People will plug it's part of the clips, right? Lorentz attractors, that's probably the more significant way to find it. Okay. Wow, there's so much. The problem is there's too much. Okay, there's too much, and I ramble too much, and I haven't told my story in so long. And I want to say this too. There's a part of me that always wished that I would tell my story on your channel. Can I say it that way?
Yeah.
It's true. Because I actually, in fact, almost signed up for Paul to do one of his randos chats. In fact, I talked to Paul before he even started his randos thing. All right, so that's maybe we'll try to tie in there.
So when you came into the Voltron Donut, you came in as a player, not somebody who came in from watching.
No. Yeah. I was involved in this long before most people know of this.
It was a thing.
Yeah. So what happened was, 2016, divorce finalized. The context here is autoimmune disease since late 2009. That interfered with a marriage that was fundamentally defined by borderline personality disorder in my ex-wife. I'm just going to state these things boldly, and if anyone wants to argue about it later, let me know. But so that's what I found out later. I didn't know it at the time.
So you're the one that got hit with the autoimmune thing.
Yeah, and that happened before the marriage. It happened before the marriage. Yeah, but she didn't realize the extent at which it might affect me, and it did in fact affect me. So, 2009, I was just a guy trying to work my way through a university system that ultimately hates contrarian thinking. But I loved it. I loved arguing with my professors. So, and working night shifts at hotels. What's up?
I suspect they do too. I suspect.
Oh, totally, man. Oh, I have so many stories. Okay, so but 2009, it just hits me. I notice a patch on the back of my scalp. It's itchy. Don't pay any attention to it for 3 months, because that's what men do. They just ignore shit. And then my knees begin to swell over the next 3 months to the point where I can no longer walk, and I go to an emergency room, and I find out that I have some strange, non-identifiable autoimmune condition. that is identified later as a psoriasis, hence the patch of itchy on the back of the scalp. Psoriatic arthritis is the term. And then about 25%, that statistic may have changed because this stuff is always live given the age of 5G and Monsanto.
No, I've researched all that. It's perfectly fine. Continue.
No, we're good. We're good. There is no agency. All right. So I found all this out, and I got prescribed a very powerful medication called Humira. And you've probably seen the commercials if you've ever watched television in the last 20 years.
I've asked my doctor about it. He says, "You don't have anything wrong with you. Why are you asking me?" I said, "Because the commercial told me."
Yeah. At the point that I inquired about it, they were making $25 million a day on that medication alone. And the reason I know that is because about a year into my second course of the medication, I had a very rare side effect that stripped the myelin from my spinal cord around the C6 or C7 region, which caused
stripping your myelin around anywhere is not good.
Well, it's
C6 and 7 is up here, is it not?
Well, no. It's right at the top of the transition between the neck and the spine. I could use the technical terms, but that's just pedantic. Yeah, and so what it's related to is control of the left arm. And so it initiated as a feeling of paresthesia, that is numbness and tingling in the.
Did it itch at all first?
Nope, no itching. I noticed.
That's my symptomatology. I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I did. I want to ask you about that if you had any autoimmune stuff, because I have a theory about that. Anyhow, I didn't recognize it first surely as a symptom because, in fact, there is a discrepancy between the pamphlets that's printed for the doctor and the patient.
What? They got different pamphlets?
Imagine that.
Weird.
I get a pamphlet that says you may experience numbness or tingling, and the doctor gets a pamphlet that says patient in 3% of the chance might have multiple sclerosis symptoms. So, what do you think the doctor said to me when we were talking about the medication? Oh, here are the side effects, the potential side effects. Maybe numbness and tingling, right? So, hey, hallelujah. I'm the guinea pig. I'm the one. Landed on me. So,
I'm sure it was properly researched on rats with long telomeres.
You know what I remember the most interestingly is the eagerness of the dermatologist to prescribe me this medication. I could tell his checkbook was just swelling. I could tell it. It was like I feel it was like, oh yeah. In fact, it worked very, very well at first. And he was gleeful. He took photographs of my legs and the psoriasis as it improved. And he's like, this drug is miraculous. And he's thinking, hallelujah, I'm going straight to the bank with this. This is so good. Right? Because
it's almost as if each patient is one of those lottery scratchers. And he was like, oh, this one I can prescribe Humira to.
Exactly. That's what it was. And so I found all this systematized thinking later on. The way that the pharmaceutical industries had essentially extended their trial period out into the public. Okay, so it happened. It actually happened to me, and I did consult with a law firm over in Texas very briefly that was specializing in this problem because it was happening to a lot of people. And
for a 3% side effect, it was happening to quite a few.
Yes. Well, I don't think it's quite 3%. It might be 0.3. It's more.
Oh, right. That's probably more accurate.
Yeah, I'm being
imprecise here.
Wait, hold on. Let me finish the thought. Wait.
I'm doing a sounding. What year is this?
This is 2012 and 13. Cusp.
So by then you should be at least deep into your truther awakening, right?
Oh yeah. Again,
this is helping, no doubt, with the awakening process.
Well, I was suspicious of it from the start. but I really had no choice. I was losing a lot of mobility. So the autoimmune condition that I have begins to deteriorate the joints, in particular the joints of my hands. You can kind of see. Let me see.
Yeah.
They're mostly inoperable. And that it was much worse at the time. It was all through my body. It was most of the major joints. I hadn't made yet the connection, and this is the worst part about it, between diet and the disease, right? And that's the thing that matters absolutely the most. But none of the doctors will talk about it. None of them will. It's so rare.
It's almost as if they're medical doctors, and the medical part means pharmaceutical.
Yeah. So I had to become a doctor, essentially. I had to educate myself and understand.
You had to take adult responsibility for your own health.
Right, yeah. And the arrival of the internet, I'd been on it since it was burgeoning in early 90s. So that's, I keep trying to insert this thread, but I all right, here it comes, we got it. So my truther movement began in the 90s. Wow, how long has it been since we've been streaming? We're finally getting around to it. I had always, this is an anecdote about Tyler's personality, I had always been obsessed about intelligence because I'd always been recognized by people around me as being very intelligent. I got moved up in grades and they wanted to test me and all that stuff. So I was just obsessed by it. Like, why are they treating me this way? I didn't feel different in a sense at that time. But I did understand something was going on. So all through the 90s, like in my teens, I joined these high IQ forums and communities where I ran into people like
what you mean high IQ forums? Like they weren't just boards where high intelligence people congregated, but they were specifically forums.
Do you want a quick? Well, let's do a quick
Mensa forum, or
yeah, let's do it.
I'm saying is the purpose that the people were there was because it was related
because
to
of high IQ. Yes, that's right. So there's the very brief history I can run through real quick. So Omni magazine used to be a thing back in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, and part of the 90s, which is like the nerds magazine. It was full of puzzles and science and all this stuff. And they would also publish things like IQ tests, like specialized IQ tests for people that score above a certain level, right? Because the standard IQ tests that have been in place since the early 1900s because of Stanford Binet and like Wechsler scales intelligence, those weren't necessarily capable of accurately measuring people who scored above the 99th percentile, above the standard.
Right, it's like a first strain filter.
Yeah, the right. The ceiling was such that above around 146, you couldn't get a good measurement. So what happened was people started to devise psychometric measurements, which were more accurate above, or they were attempting to be above that level. And so naturally what happens is in the age of the internet, when this coincides with this, so like 80s, 90s, what you have is people like Hofflin, and this the guy I was about to mention is this guy named Chris Langdon. Do you know Chris Langdon?
I might know of him, or I might be confusing it with somebody
that just got resurrected through the Theory of Everything channel, the Kurt Jermingles.
If I'm not mistaken, there's a video on this channel called like Akash and the Langoliers or something. I'll dig it up now that we're at the top of the hour and it's time to run some branding nonsense anyway.
Okay, good. Perfect timing. I'll be right back.
Welcome, everybody. Remember it. We walk past. Sorry, guys. I try not to let that one run that long.
Imagine having a computer system that kept track of every event, thought, image, or desire that had ever transpired on the earth. Imagine as well that rather than simply a compilation of written data and words, this system contained countless videotape films and pictures, providing the viewer with an eyewitness account of all that had ever happened within any historical time frame. Imagine as well that this enormous database kept track not only of the information from an objective perspective, but also maintained the perspectives and emotions of every individual involved. Finally, imagine that this source contained not only information from the past and present, but also constantly calculated probable futures based on current events. As incredible as all of this may sound, this description gives a fairly accurate representation of the Akashic records.
Same time, in telic recursion, it seems like all of the states are being considered. So am I only conscious of a few, but unconscious?
You're locked into terminal consciousness. You have a form of consciousness that is appropriate to life in the terminal domain. Okay, what I'm talking about, telic recursion occurs in the non-terminal domain. It involves a different form of consciousness. And in the expansive manifold, it's its own memory. It consists of layer upon layer upon layer of events that never disappear and never go away. They're right there. Nothing, you don't even have to reach into storage and pull this information out. It's right there. All right? And that's one of the advantages of having a manifold structured in the way that CTMU is structured. Everything is right there as it is needed. And of course, telons are adaptive. Okay, telic recursion is adaptive. When things happen that are not necessarily in accord with a certain telon, the telon adapts to the new set of resources at its disposal and comes together again, approaching the same final outcome.
Does one have to be adaptive? If one is, let's say, incoherent, which I heard you equate evil to.
I didn't equate evil to incoherence. I said evil is incoherent.
Your face is very large for me right now.
Okay, so basically it's incoherent because evil is anti-existence. All right, basically it hates existence and it wants to go out of existence, right? But when you take a bunch of evil and it won't recognize its own existence and it won't recognize the existence of anything else, it's very hard to coordinate. It can't be coordinated, so it becomes incoherent. The only way that evil actually achieves any sort of reality is it uses physical systems to do it. It nucleates physical systems and uses their structure, their power structures, their hierarchies in order to be realized. That's information out. It's right there.
Okay, we're on now. The fellow you mentioned, the Chris Langdon, it's the forehead above me.
Yeah, he's a forehead above me.
And the Toronto Kurt is the forehead above you.
Yeah. Wait, what? Who's a forehead above
on
me?
the screen? I don't know if you can see the screen that much.
Yeah, look at that forehead. Wow, I love Kurt.
That's that Langdon guy you were talking about, and the one above you is Toronto Kurt, or Kurt from Theories of Everything. Who? Last year, not this year. Last year,
he was once a student of Vervaeke. Imagine that.
I asked him to be my Valentine and come on my show, and he did not. So,
oh man! All right, okay, all right. Look,
so you're in these brainy intelligence forums.
Do you know what intelligence is good for? It's making sure that you don't lose any threads. The cognitive theoretic model of the universe, the CTMU, correct? So this was being developed in the late 80s and the 90s. And I was part of the forums where Chris was sharing it, and we were part of the arguments that was occurring. And that's what I did for fun. I argued with other people that consider themselves the smartest of the smartest. So
me too, but it was about a video game, not a theory.
Yeah, and I think
arguing with people.
Oh, I found a clip I wanted to share, but I lost it. I need to go back and find it. It's beautiful, Grim. It's beautiful. Have you shared it on this one? You had to have. It's from a long time ago on your After Dark stream, when you were considering the retiring of your alternate persona.
Oh no, nobody in the corner knows. Like, there's 3 people in the corner that know anything about the old stuff on the After Dark.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so good. You need, yeah, that's part of the arc. All right. So
you're hanging out on internet forums arguing with this Langdon fellow while you're going.
I didn't argue with Chris really. I was a tier below. I mean, Chris is like in the 200 IQ range. This guy's wacky. I mean, he's it's really, I can't go into it right now. It would waste too much time. But in the 160 to 200 range, there's a weird like you can talk between 160 and 200. You can talk, like you can have a shared language. You'll argue over the weirdest shit, like the most subtle arcane whatever, right? But you can communicate with each other. Below 160, it's like in the wild. It's it's Deadwood, right? It's like that whole. It's like everything partitions into these little camps where people prefer a certain kind of language that's related to the nuance. It's basically how much they can chop the world up into pieces and then keep track of how those things relate. That's the game, right? That's what intelligence gets used as in our cultural landscape. It's like, how many pieces can I keep track of? Now, so if you rig the game so that you can keep track of more because you define the niche where you're in, you wind up with circumstances like the truther movement to tie that back in, right? So that's what we're wrestling with. So I came to a realization early on.
Is that the suggestion that the truther movement is indicative of an intelligence range?
Yes. It's indicative of intelligence in general, being that which is communicating with itself, ultimately about the nature of what it is best to know about itself. Not to get unnecessarily metaphysical.
Well, since we're as close to unnecessarily metaphysical as we want to go,
yeah.
Collective dropped this in the chat, Hive Mind chat, and if I want to parse it, I think we're gonna bump up against this edge of the metaphysical.
Oh, okay. So Dismal's aware of it. Yeah.
He proposes a metasyntactic reduction, which sound I would compress into a compression algorithm.
Yep.
Function of set theory. So I'm not familiar with the various functions of set theory, so I don't think I can get anywhere with that. In order to overcome dualism, which apparently is a goal that we would like to achieve through this compression algorithm thing of set theory.
Yep. So we can talk about it.
That's as close as my IQ can get to parsing it. Can you help?
Maybe. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just completely unnecessary to talk about, right? It's like talking about the tensile strength of the top of your piston in your internal combustion engine. It's like, that shit's like 3.7. Like, okay, well, like, get in the car, press the gas, and go. Like, that's what we live for. This other stuff, it becomes this like niche of expertise. It's purely a language game, which is, again, it's this game of how many pieces can I keep track of and then still kind of plausibly make sense. Because at some point, and we'll bring in some biblical thread here, you get to the Peter principle in all circumstances. That is, as people succeed in their various niche, they get promoted by the others around them to the point where they're ultimately in a place where they're in ignorance, but they still act as though they know what they're talking about. It's also from business, right? You get promoted to a point where, like, yeah, I'm doing great, I'm great, and eventually you reach a point where you're like, you don't know what you're doing.
Everybody who stays where they're at has peaked.
Exactly. Sort of. Okay. Ultimately, I mean, if we can bring in some Teilhard, some.
Okay. Everybody who stays where they're at is beyond their peak.
We don't know in terms of pacing.
Okay.
It's because ultimately what we can say is probably something like, given the contingency or the necessity of contingency with regards to causality, all things collapse back into themselves at some point, given some sufficient length of time. I can justify that. If
That
you
is
like
the
going-
fanciest way of all things. What goes up must come down. I have ever heard, but okay.
But yeah, that's fractal. Of course it is. It's fractal. It's like gravity. Okay, but there's something interesting about gravity, which is a little bit different. And I think, frankly, we can think about it in terms rather of a centralizing focus and more in terms of a negative, like a pressure.
It's like a bowling ball on a sheet, usually. Is how I
Yes,
think
it's
of
what they
gravity.
usually do, which is centralizing the force to the point of the most mass. And what I would suggest, in fact, is that it's the opposite. It's the inversion of that. It's the existence of a general pressure, and this is what we call the cosmological constant, which is why it's related to it. It's a pressure of energy and density, which causes in the existence of a certain kind of field of effect, which we call mass. Allah, and I will. Oh wow, that's a weird pun. Allah. Allah, I would call it also the structure of the nature of angels. That is the contingency of the transference of a will through some continuum, right? So, wow, I hope I'm making sense to people. This is really hard. Like we're jumping.
I know.
around.
I'm just trying to get your story, and
I know. I. It's so much. It's so related. It's so related.
let's check in with Sandy. I don't know what I'm talking about. Question. I don't know Langdon, but immediately thought of plastic, garbage, and coastal life living on it. Was he a marine biologist?
No, wrong guy. He was a bouncer.
And in this video, to me, it looks like he's broadcasting from the North Pole, some or South Pole.
No, he's in Montana. He's in Montana.
Oh,
curiously enough, he's in Montana, not very far from the place where the Mormons identify as the original Garden of Eden. Just to throw that in there.
All right, so back to your life. You're on the internet arguing with these people. It's 2012. The apocalypse is about to hit poor.
No,
old
that
Rick.
was the 90s. That was the 90s. I checked out right around high school graduation. I absolutely discerned that it was a dick measuring contest for IQ. That's
you figured it out.
Yeah, I did. I was like, yes, the way that I can actually succeed over their impossibly high IQs is to not play the game. Thank you very much, Matthew Broderick and War Games. There's deep wisdom in these little moments, right?
Yes, that's those storytellers we admired earlier. See,
I love them. Yep.
My take from being down in the social strata I was in is that if I was in the position of the storytellers, that like what truth I had found, I would hide in what I was allowed to put out as best I could. And with that, that is based the formation of my understanding of how the world actually works is by
which is that continuously veiling process. Yes.
Yeah, the subtle layer underneath all of what I was fed about what the writers were telling me about how the world worked.
Right. Okay. So that's the core essence of my modus operandi at the moment, which is to say, never be satisfied that I have achieved the surpassing of the final veil. Never think that I know it all. Never think that my position is superior, such that I can define the image that it can conform to, which is ultimately what we end up defining as this thing called the luciferian principle, which is the idea that my image internally from this central spot can then define all of being outside, right? Its choice is stripped from it because I define what it can and can't be. The alternative to that, of course, is utter chaos where no organization is possible. So it's always in the middle ground between these two things where choice exists, between the polarities of impossibility. That's what paradox is. Like that's what real choice is. When you make a choice, what you're essentially doing is defining the possibilities of the universe that you're participating in.
Yeah.
That's paradox. All right. So what I realized was I had been a divorced, diseased, pathetic, depressed, sad
That pathetic is debatable, but the
So
rest
I know. Dude, come on, let me just be comedic. Nearly defeated. No, never defeated. I'm being too dramatic. I was really sad. Okay, I was really sad. I had 2 kids. My wife was evil, still is. Oh my gosh, I'm not going there.
Well, we had Langdon's take on evil, and it really is a indictment against my own existence a lot.
Yeah, we're not going to go. Okay, we have a lot of overlap and shared experience, perhaps in these realms, but the genesis of that stress in the world caused me to want to rise above it. Let me say it that way. I needed to. I didn't want to.
You had little motivations running around.
I had identity. I had identity that I'd recognized from a very young age about the nature of who I was that didn't comport to the circumstances that I was in. And so I changed my circumstances. And that was, it was the result of a prayer to the Almighty, a prayer. I know that I shouldn't be what I am now. What do I need to do? And the answer that came back to me was move. It was as simple as move. That was it. Just move. I was lying in bed. I was under the belief that I couldn't move, that I was constrained by a disease that was crippling me slowly. I noticed that my face blurred right when I said that. Isn't that synchronous? But I had come to believe that about myself. I'd believed that because of what my ex-wife had said about me, what she had abused me with, in a sense, like this identity that she was assigning. Not to disparage her completely, but what a horrible person. So no, I read what I tried to find out was like, where had I gone wrong? Because no matter what she had done, I had done something. And I recognized something about what it is I felt I needed to complete me. And I was choosing partners that subconsciously were telling me something about myself that I hadn't recognized, because instead of taking responsibility for why I was choosing them, I was placing the failure as responsibility within them, which was true, but it was irrelevant to who I am. It's my life. Okay. Like, you're a bitch. It's fine. Like, you're an evil, horrible person. Fine. Why is my life, such as it is, related in that way and defined by in that way who you are? And I needed to understand that. So I'll skip a lot of anecdotes. I came across Wim Hof, who taught me how to breathe. And in breathing, I found out how to invert the polarities of pain and pleasure. And
Whoa, that's just from breathing?
Yes, yeah. Hypoxia, which is an inadequacy of oxygen, which is a failure state for the way in which our cognitive functions are enabled, which in that failure state makes it susceptible to the finest of impressions, which is precisely the surface layer of the quantum realm, which is capable of being influenced by what we call will. So bringing ourselves to what we would call the tipping point of a precisely balanced seesaw is a place where we can begin to recognize the difference between an inhale and an exhale, that infinitesimal moment between changing in directions and changing in polarities, therefore. Because of what I recognized was that there are people that exist that have what we would classically call like masochism. That is, they take some pleasure from pain. I believed that they exist. I'd seen evidence of it. So I thought, if there's something which consciousness does, at the very least, it's simplistic. The simplest form of it is a singular change in state. It's bimodal. It's binary. So I sat in my bed and I did Wim Hof's breathing method, and I focused on my hips, and I willed the feeling of pain to invert into the feeling of pleasure, which is all it is. It's just an inversion. To interpret it as a pain or pleasure. And it worked. It worked. It happened. Like,
how'd you get past your self-deception protocols?
That's what I think the hypoxia does. That's what I think. It's like it brings you to the
because like those protocols haven't served us, and now we're in failure state, so we don't have to adhere to them anymore.
They don't have the oxygen necessary to run their functions metabolically, right?
Oh, that's you.
Yeah. So you're bringing the teeter-totter to this very fine middle ground, right?
And so, what year are we in where this Wim Hof moment happened?
2016.
Okay.
Late 2016. So this is just prior to Jordan Peterson's introduction into the cultural zeitgeist via the Bill C-16. I found him on a Reddit forum in my attempts to understand myself and like what was going on, post a very strong psychedelic trip that that's a long anecdote.
Well, why don't we take a break and get it from you when we come back after this fancy musical interlude. Share this tab instead. Sitting here on my
horses that I own, reaping grapes with the flow, has earned me the indigo. This corner's now my home.
That's my favorite part. Now, I'm not gonna forcibly rip an anecdote about a bad trip from you, but as someone who has seen The Shining Darkness, I'm always curious what the others have found when stepping through. So, if you don't mind, please recount the tale.
Oh yeah. In my rebellious youth as a teen, escaping a abusive but loving, flawed father, escaping authoritarianism, really, in terms of the relationship between consciousness and the felt experience of freedom. I did use psychedelics between the ages of like 15 and 19, roughly, purely in terms of just that felt sense of freedom. Like, it was extraordinary. I took right to them. I could take any amount. Didn't bother me. Like, any amount, didn't matter. Until one day, when I took so many, I know in fact exactly how many I ate because we had counted them out beforehand. But I consumed in a period of probably about 5 hours, 65 caps, 65 full mushrooms. These are psilocybin.
Estimated grams on that, would you?
Oh, no way. I can't. It's like they're all different sizes, but I counted them. I did count them. They were from the size of say like a silver dollar to probably coffee saucer or something, coffee cup saucer.
And typical psilocybin, not other weirdness.
Cubensis, yeah, in Florida, right?
Okay.
Very potent, but I had been doing them for 2 days straight, so I needed a higher dose. So I was a crazy reckless. I don't know if I was crazy or reckless. I tolerated them very well, so it sounds, I guess, more than it really is, or what it became, in fact. So that's the important point. It was way too much. I ate 65, right? So I remember this moment where I ate the last one. I completely emptied out my Ziploc bag. I was in a weird kind of competition with my friends. I could tell. I was like, yeah, I'm going the furthest, man. I'm going furthest. And I ate that last one, and it went down, and I could feel it. I was already deeply into a trip, right? But I could feel it stop, right? This, like, the top of my stomach. It just stopped. It was like, oh no! I just filled my entire stomach contents with psychedelic mushrooms. Are you out of your mind, Tyler? And the moment I had that thought, the guy whose land we were on, who we owned, his father showed up. He started driving through the woods closer to us, and his headlights were showing up in the woods. And this coincided with like all of the peak of everything coming at once. So this is the one and only bad trip I've ever had, which was in fact strangely, profoundly self-reflective, because what happened was we were in a gazebo, wooden gazebo, and his father drove by, and we were on a what was a lumber processing farm. They cut down pine and turned it into lumber, and they had this giant steaming barn, and this is fascinating. But we were under a gazebo, and his dad came to do some late night work. I mean, that's completely innocuous, but the paranoia of like being caught, right, in the consciousness of tripping as a teenager initiated what was this metaphysically, it's the state of the universe being against you, right? Which ordinarily is just these very subtle signals for most people, oh, so and so doesn't like me, right? But this was like, no. The universe suddenly is like questioning why you're there and what you're doing. But I didn't see all this at the time. I just saw there's a profound moment where I saw my face copied thousands of times in like a stamping pattern on all the surfaces everywhere I looked. It's like this a kind of accusatory, half accusatory self-acknowledgement of what who it was doing this, whatever was occurring, was being judged by the universe. And then after that, it turned into a confrontation with infinity. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but my consciousness felt like it tried to be present for too much. It was smeared too thinly, something like that. It wasn't necessarily a bad trip. I was just scared because it was so profoundly different than what I'd ever experienced. It brought me to a kind of questioning, which was a plea to an almighty, right? It was like there must be a force out there which is equivalent to the fear that I have, right? I had this intuitive sense of it, and I had to call out to it. And I knew that as the thing which people had been pointing to as a child regarding religion and this idea of God, right? I knew it intuitively. There was some vague thing that I was aimed at in wanting to know and understand how it is I might be saved from this present circumstance, which was purely here inside my identity. And I think that was a formative moment. And we call them by different names, but what it taught me, I think, was at the very least how the brain might break. And so when we weave that back into my need to search the world for an understanding about why my ex-wife was what she was, and why a la Peterson malevolence existed, period, like why it is all of the tragic stuff happens, led me to this adventure where I called up my brother post Wim Hof and that inversion of pain, who was a regular festival attendee and I knew could acquire something of value. And I requested it, and he brought it over very quickly. And it was a combination of LSD, although it might likely have been a research chemical that was unnamed. It did not feel like the LSD I took as a kid. And then he also brought a DMT pen that he had me take at the peak of the LSD trip, or whatever it was. This resulted, I had never done DMT before. This resulted in I mean, anyone who's never done DMT has no. Have you ever done DMT?
Almost. I inhaled some, and it offered to take me up to a place, and I said no, thank you.
Yeah.
As far as I ever got.
But you do have a story about coming up against the door. Yeah. Is that the closest you ever got?
I saw the black sun.
Okay.
Thanks to psilocybin, and that was plenty for me.
You could also have been watching like The Fifth Element. It's great movie. All right. Well, okay. So the best way I could describe this is, and maybe we could, so for people who haven't ever taken it, on the inside of your eyeball, is a curved surface, right? It's a hyperbolic surface. That is its negative curvature. It's not positive curvature like the Earth. It's inverted. It's negative.
It's like a bowl.
Like a bowl. And somehow that receives light from the outside world and creates or recreates or co-creates the existence of the world around you in this three-dimensional landscape that does not seem to be negatively curved. It seems, in fact, to be quite Euclidean. That is to say, the fifth postulate, that it is, parallel lines never in fact meet. So the horizon extends on into infinity. There's some quibble about that with regards to Einsteinian whatever, but Lobachevskian, we can just go down that rabbit hole. But the point is, what happens when you take some of these substances, in particular DMT, is that you become aware of the hyperbolic nature of the pattern of the world as it's impressed upon you. That is, you become aware of the negative curvature of that which you are experiencing. So it's
fishbowl?
not.
You feel like you're in a fishbowl?
No, it feels like all surfaces are fishbowl-esque.
That would be
So it's not a centralized fishbowl phenomenon. It's all things are participating in a hyperbolic geometry.
Hey there.
Hey, Hezzy.
All things are participating in a hyperbolic geometry. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm GrimGriz. This is Tyler. We're doing this.
We are doing it. And if you want to take a look at this, Harvard, in fact, has a lot of really good information on the relationship between vision and geometry and psychedelics. They in fact, have a whole lab that's focused on this. The name escapes me at the moment, but I'm sure Google will suit you, and the Reapers and Clip artists will do their work. Okay, so at some point, you can imagine if you start to begin to alter the curvature of that hyperbolic geometry, of that negative curvature, right? And you then invert it. There's a moment where you're literally passing into a completely different experience of dimension. It's the difference between positive and negative.
While you're in the gate.
Yeah. It's passing through that, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also this other thing, which is no curvature, right? It's like, it seems I don't know of anyone that can define what would be beyond this place. I think it's just.
It would seem to me that at that threshold, everything would stretch vertically to infinity. But
I mean, like you can't reasonably speak about points and distance and all that. So yeah, it's all paradoxical. But that's what it perceives as. But nevertheless, there's content. Nevertheless, there is content. That's what's so interesting about it. There is also, in fact, though, a lack of content. So there's a profound diminishing of what we would ordinarily experience as content. So, all right. So I did this, and I had never experienced anything quite like it, but I recognized it immediately as something very profound. Just as a shorthand, I saw the Milky Way galaxy recreated in my thigh, like in ultimate detail. Like I was persistent within it, and I could move within it, and that was happening in real time. And I saw that happen. I was like, oh wow, that's not how other trips have gone before. And I tried to stand up, and I wandered over to the kitchen in my apartment. This is post-divorce. It's
while the Milky Way is in your thigh, you go to the kitchen.
I lost sense of that at some point.
Okay.
Things began turning into a sense of, I recognized them as living tissue. They were no longer geometric. All of the surface area was living tissue, which was direct. So what it was doing was something like recognizing the association between the projected nature of the sense data that I was receiving and the fact that it was touching on the living tissue of me. That's what it felt like. Rather than perceive the geometry of it, I was perceiving me projected onto the geometry of it. And then I felt like I was going beyond the question of, am I projecting onto it or is it projecting onto me? That's what it felt like. I was like, what's going on here? So it's like, is it conforming onto me or am I conforming onto it? And I could feel the pressure and the tension of that. And I made it to my kitchen and I fell down on the floor, like on my back. And that's where it just like, that question stopped being answered, but by it was
your narrator.
No, I don't even know. Okay, so we'll try. Everything disappeared except for a kind of a sea of white. It was like it was a sea of white, and yet in front of me there was a white hole, like a portal. That's what it felt like. And I was like drifting towards it. I could feel an embodied sense drifting towards it. And I recognized vaguely a sense of humanness to it. Like I had a body. But it was primarily felt sense of the head. And I don't know, I have no idea sense of time for this, but as I got close to the hole, I could sense beings on the other side of it, right? And I had no way to define them except that it was this weird, ambiguous sense of like there's something like a scientist or a priest or a doctor. It was all these weird amalgamations of something like people who I conceived of as those who were interested in knowing, loving, and caring for. Something like that. It was a mix of it. And what they wanted was me to come through this hole, like they were inviting me through. And so I don't know when this association happened. It couldn't have been while it was occurring, but these memories are so twisted now because of how strange this experience is. I remembered the holotropic breathing, if you're aware of and I thought maybe this was like a rebirth experience, right? Like I was drifting towards this, and I remembered. So I was born cesarean. There was a cut opened up, right? It was perfect. I was thinking, wow, what if this is like symbolic of the earliest memory that I'm consciously aware of? But it was more than that. It was far more than that, right? It's just an interesting idea. Anyhow, my head pops through this like white hole, and that's all that's like where memory completely fails me in a sense. I had like I remember something rushing into me, like a white light, like rushing into me. And I had a deep realization that there was something flowing into me that was transforming what I was experiencing, who I was, my identity, and it could only be received, and this is the strange part, like as love. Like the structure of it itself could only be properly interpreted or received as love. That was it. Like if I didn't receive it that way, I could not be transformed by it. That was the impression. That was the only thing I understood about it. Otherwise, I had no idea what the contents were. Like I couldn't interpret it. It was just like this. Like,
this is love, and if you don't take it, you can't have it.
Exactly. No, it was like, but it wasn't like that. Like I mean, that was a caricature.
Not with that tone.
No, of course it's right. It's not as silly as we are, but it was definitely like you have a choice in this, but if you receive this, it will transform you, right? Like no doubt about it. And so I did. I was like, yeah, because I've always done that. Like I've been the guy. Yeah, I was always the guy that like walked out on the end of the limb and like jumped first, so my friends followed me.
Well,
you got a button.
Some people don't do that.
No, some people don't do that,
as you may know. And because this is the way I do things, we're now going to run a clip of someone not doing that.
Let's rewind. Rewind the remind.
Really concentrating hard on that Mandela and the sky opening up and God sort of peering forth through the clouds. And that's exactly what seemed to happen to me, is there was something like another dimension, classically something like the Holy Ghost, I suppose. Well, it was like being in heaven. I could feel myself transformed, transmuted as a consequence of this experience. Then I felt whatever had descended, it seemed that as if it was sorrowful, and it departed from me slowly. Whereas I shook physically for about half an hour after that experience, like I was shaking, you know, like you shake after a car accident. What is the story behind the logo that you use in your intros? Where did it come from? That logo is called The Meaning of Music, and it's actually a sculpture that I made in 1985. It's a three-dimensional representation of a two-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional object. It's a representation of time and space. So you know how music unfolds and then something else unfolds within it, and then it unfolds again within it, like a rose opening into the day, or like a lotus flower that sort of comes up from the darkest depths up through the dark water and then blooms on the surface of the water in the sun. It's a Mandela image, and for Jung, the Mandela was a symbol of the self, and the self was something that unfolds like music, which is actually why we like music. And I had a very intense religious experience at one point when I was contemplating that. I'd been reading Jung a lot at that point, like for months of intense reading. This was back in 1985 when I was a graduate student, and I was listening to the Jupiter Symphony. This happened, man. So this happened. So I was really watching that Mandela, that quarter Mandela that I had made intensely, and listening to the music, trying to understand what the music was signifying. I was really concentrating hard on that Mandela, and I was standing in my living room, and then I had this very strange experience. The sky opening up and God sort of peering forth through the clouds. And that's exactly what seemed to happen to me, is that I had this sense. It was like a vision, although I was still in my living room and knew it. But inside the theater of my imagination, I could feel the sky opening up. Now, the only way I can really think about it is that it was something like another dimension. And then I could feel this force descend upon me. Classically, something like the Holy Ghost, I suppose. And it filled me with this intense sense of paradisal, I don't know how to say it. Well, it was like being in heaven for some brief period of time. I could feel myself transformed, transmuted as a consequence of this experience. It was as if I was in the presence of something that was living, you know, and I suppose that was an experience of God, if you want to put it that way. That's certainly what it seemed like. And I felt that I could live that way. I could live transfigured like that permanently if I desired it. And I thought, I don't know how I would act. I don't know how I would interact with people. I don't know how people would interact with me. I just don't think that I could do it. And then I felt that whatever had descended, it seemed that as if it was sorrowful, and it departed from me slowly. And it was as if a gift had been offered that I wasn't in no position to receive.
So that's if you don't let it transform you. But you did, apparently. And according to Elliot Rosewater, this is not the Mandela effect I've experienced. So there you are. Head through the portal. Love flowing through you, transforming you.
Yeah, it's so interesting, like the way these words destroy our ability to understand these things. But I had no idea what would occur over time. But I lose track of what happens after that. I don't, like, it's become increasingly difficult to remember over time what happened.
But you do recall that you were aware you were being transformed.
Well, so when I came out of wherever I was, I realized that my brother was still in my living room, and that he was probably worried about me because I felt like I was gone for who knows how long. So I called out to him. I said, okay. So I remember the message that it felt like most that they were trying to impart to me. This is the thing. Like, all right. Every living being has a justification. That is, it exists because it must, right? Like that was the feeling that it gave to me. It was really fascinating. It's like a full justification for my existence, and the promise that there was more on the other side, right?
Oh, that would be nice to go through life having one of those.
You are, but you're not consciously aware of all of it. All of us are. We're selectively aware of different parts of why we're motivating these different trajectories in our lives. But you start to sound really crazy when you start to talk about different layers. So we're already starting crazy enough as it is. So no, the ultimate import of this ingestion of the divine, whatever it was, wouldn't come out until it's still coming out in a sense. I couldn't.
This was 2016, and we are at the Peterson point.
This is early 2017, which is when I received Psychedelics. But yeah, previous work had been done, and then so I come out of it, and I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk for hours, but I could write. I could scribble stuff. So I still have the record of all that stuff, right? Like all the thoughts that were kind of flowing out of me, which were the kind of the seeds which would ultimately grow into what we're going to get to, which is how I arrived at this corner, right? Like this is such a rambling long. I have no idea if this is making any sense. I hope it is. We can supplement if we need to. All right. So what I did was I kind of woke up from this enormous sense of slumber, like a sense of purpose was so profound. I hadn't felt it since I was a child, since the naturalness of just coming to this world and just being happy with the way things are as they are. And it was fully refreshed. And I was like, wow, I could do stuff just to do stuff. Whoa, that's amazing. But nevertheless, I had stuff to do. And I didn't know what that stuff was. But over time, I became obsessed with trying to understand certain things about the world. Just random stuff I'd never really conceived of as a thing to think about. One of them was pathing algorithms. I became obsessed by pathing algorithms, given a grid of different choices about how you would move from point to point. How do you find the best route to a place? And if you were to use an algorithm, how do you search a space to get there? I just became obsessed with this idea, and I started working on it. And I got led to lightning. I got led to lightning, right? Which is this idea of how is it that the positive and the negative leaders in these potential fields find each other and then select the closest possible path, right, for the least amount of energy loss. And so what I found out was that I was trying to recreate an understanding about the physical laws behind the connecting points between two bimodal fields of interaction. With that, oh man, okay, that was the wrong way to. That was too far ahead. Okay. That is.
So you determined that lightning is does what it does because the positive and negative power players find each other and start dancing.
There's something which wants to go from A to B. It's pathing, right? It's something wants to go. What else are we talking about? If you're talking about the complexities of it get really the fact that I'm speaking into this microphone, it's voice from A to B to C to D to E, right? The trajectory is a question of spatiotemporal change. We're just talking about change over time in some spatial orientation. So it's just it's what are the choices with regards to how it is we're shaping the material in that trajectory, and the complexities of that get intense. All right, we don't need to go any further. So I wanted to know, given the layer that we're at regarding humans, regarding Tyler's ex-wife, regarding the fact that there's a socio-cultural layer which is exacerbating mental illnesses, which is exacerbating the inability to make sense of the world. This is pre-Vervaeke, right? Pre even Peterson, saying like, why are these fundamental institutions breaking down in this way? How is this not making sense at all?
What is the nature of the toxicity in the social layer?
Yeah.
Why is it so thick?
Yeah. So what I wanted to devise was a new way of offering, because ultimately what I had to be confronted with was aphorisms are actually incredibly helpful. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Like, unless you give them a bunch of mushrooms or DMT. So I didn't expect. I came to kind of in a Zen-esque sense, not expect to change other people or allow my ex-wife, but rather the best chance I had to make justice was to build a world where my children could experience what it is I felt like we could build together. Felt like a worthy journey. That's what it settled down into. And then the question of that journey, it's like, what are you doing? Like, this path trajectory, what are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing with your time? What are you building? What are you not building? What are you building for someone else? All that started to like wrap up inside me. And so I started to see these patterns of the answer to the question of what are you building for somebody else? And that became very important to me. And I remembered the earlier trajectories of the truther stuff. And so I started paying attention to the subterranean movements of influence, which had to exist. They've always existed. Right. And so I started to see these patterns of what it was getting moved on and pumped up and copied. Why? I found this guy named Jordan Hall who was giving a lecture route, right? Like influencing people.
I've heard of that fella, but I haven't talked to him yet.
He was Green Hall at the time. Yeah, it would be cool if you talked to him. We're definitely going to. You understand that, right? Like, this game only converges closer and closer. So
I hold on to the notion that I'm pretty sure God believes in me, and the rest of it I don't look too far forward.
No. You just do it idly, speculatively. It doesn't matter. It's fun, because that's what happened. So I met Jordan through his Medium and through his YouTube presence, where he was engaging in a project he called the Deep Code. It was part of a strategy that was concocted at some point in the past. I don't know exactly.
By some unnamed principalities.
By some unnamed principalities, where they were attempting, in his own words, to offer up a bat signal into the internetscape, where select individuals would be called forward to engage with a potential co-developing space of, I don't even know what to call this thing, like the human potential movement, like transformed like half a dozen different
Well,
times.
let's just take what the man said.
Yes.
The man said it's like a bat signal. What do we know about bat signals? Who is meant to receive a bat signal? A billionaire.
Man, yep.
So that's what he was up to.
Well, it's interesting because it's actually a little bit compartmentalized, because I don't know if there are a good representation of Batman. I think it's in a sense, in a Deleuzian sense, to invoke.
Oh, okay, hold on, because like I'm not sure what you mean by Deleuzian, and it sounds an awful lot like delusion to me.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
that's where I'm gonna map it if you don't correct me.
No, map it. There's a Deleuzian, Jacques Deleuze. There's schizophrenia and capitalism. There's some really good stuff there. You should go take a look. It's really interesting. But oh no, I almost lost it. Hold on. I almost lost the thread.
Do you know what I do when we lose the thread? I play
press the
branding.
button. Press.
And while it's true, and while it is true that you can get Rascal on a shirt, you can also now get Beholder on a tank top at the link. I think it's in the description below. You find the thread?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, David, that's right. That's right. I forget there's a little chat over here. This is really nice. That's right. It's very it can be confused, and yet there are threads of meaning which are very vital through some of their thought. Nevertheless, it is one of the threads that I found through Jordan Greenhall at the time, and for whatever reason, I wrote an article on Medium. It's not a good article, but I contacted Jordan on Medium, and he agreed to meet with me. Right, so this I just believed that it was possible that this he was there. He was like a co-introducer of the DivX platform. You remember that?
I've heard of that, actually.
Okay, this is a fascinating synchronicity. I think you'll really like this. The first movie to be distributed via this codex, this DivX codex, back in 2000, I think it was 2000, was The Matrix. Yeah, and Jordan Hall was attached to the other guy who was a technology guy whose name escapes me. But the point is, there's a long history of people who arise through some Ivy League institution that get suddenly co-opted by some particular agency that then find themselves somehow influential in a particular space so that they can begin to craft a particular set of projects that are in accordance with an agency that shall not be named times 10 or 12 or however many.
There's lots of players. But remember, everybody, there is no agency. It's just a bunch of jackass humans LARPing that there is.
There's so many of them. And so what I found was there's something ongoing already, right? I had this impulsive need to want to build something and respond to the state of the world. But then I saw suddenly in my greatest hubris, there was in fact, a whole lot of people that have been doing I was like, yeah, I'm going to save the world. This is great. This is great. It's like a worthy cause. I'm going to do this. And then I open my eyes and I say, oh, wow. Wow. What's that guy's name? Oh, I forget. Owen Williams? Oh, no, not Owen.
Owen Benjamin?
Owen Benjamin? No, not him. No. The Owen, what's his name? Oh, wow.
I guess I don't know that one.
Oh man, I was an actor. That's an
yeah, the nose guy. I got
the nose guy.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson.
Wilson. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm so bad with names. It's actually that's the thing I'm worst with is referencing a specific identity. To be arcane, but. Okay, we got to go way back to the thread. Okay, the thread. Okay.
You're getting involved with Jordan Greenhall.
Jordan Hall, yep. So I actually had a discussion with him, right? So I call him up on Zoom and I show him what I've been working on, which is essentially what I discovered was if you use this is an analog to the pathing problem with lightning, right? If you use a stigmergic method, which is
not involving bleeding hands, that's something else.
Nope. Not stigmata, but stigmergic.
Okay.
This is related to ants and how they pathfind, right? Because ants find things. You ever notice how quickly they find things, and then suddenly they have like a whole trail of ants that just grab it? Well, the way they do this is they send ants out continuously, randomly looking for things, and the moment they find something, it follows its own trail back to the nest. Now, this immediately doubles the strength of the pheromone trail, right?
Mhm.
And Stigmergy shout out, go Stigmergy. I guess that's a camp. So that doubles the strength. This, of course, attracts local ants, right? So local ants now are recruited to that double strength pheromone because obviously they love pheromones. And then that, of course, that quadruples it, and then eighth, right? It keeps doubling, and it goes up really quickly. So then you have a whole highway of ants that are traveling on this thing, and it actually optimizes itself over time. So what I realized was that you could use the collective output of rankings in a knowledge map that existed on the internet as a way to develop a much more effective educational system than what we were experiencing with things like university. And that's essentially how I found Peterson. I was working on that, right? It was at the same time. So I built this kind of conceptual mapping where you're using like a tokenized version of how to create paths through like an enormous amount of all these, or essentially being continuously developed YouTube videos about how to do anything in the world, right? And so I started. I took like curricula. So I took curricula from local universities, and then I used that to create a map whereby you could have an associative online educational mapping for that same university process. And then you could
anything to do like my notion of having here's the history they're not teaching you complimentary course for the youngins.
Yeah. Well, probably. One of the core things that we definitely have to get better at is representing the whole of history, which I think can only be done in, like, imagine something like Google Earth where you have the whole Earth in front of you, and you kind of wind the clock back, and throughout, like, you can wind it forward, but throughout time, you're seeing the history of actual real things on the surface of the Earth and how they interact and how they relate to each other and how they influence further things. That's the only way to get a good grasp of like all of these abstractions and categories and historical like particularities that we've chosen to. It's just too complex.
The interaction of all the different currents is quite
the tapestry. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're probably off. Man, how long is this going to be? Holy shit.
It doesn't matter, man.
It doesn't matter. Okay, this is bonus rounds. All right. Okay, so I spoke with Jordan, and surprisingly, it was a really weird discussion. At first, I mean, this guy's in Hawaii, I thought at first, but it turned out to be just the coast of California, which is basically the same thing as Hawaii. And he was in his backyard, and like the palm trees are blowing in the background, and he's on a laptop, and he's like he's on something. He's microdosing, basically. He's on something, right? I can tell his eyes are rolling up into his upper eyelids, essentially talking to me. He's in another realm, right? And I'm like talking away. I'm like, yeah, check this out. And I'm like showing him all this stuff that I'd built, and I'm talking about this stuff. And at some point I can see he's like, whoa, he kind of snaps out of it. He's like, what are you talking about? It's really interesting. He's like, oh, it's like he had been accustomed to listening to a lot of people talk about stuff. And it was that point I realized, oh yeah, all day long, he's talking to people all day long, and they're all feeding him these ideas that they have, because that's what they're doing. It's the bat signal. So I realized, like, oh man, I'm participating in that. Interesting. And he snaps out of it, and he says this to me. He's like, all right, so do that thing where you like assess it, where it's in like multi-dimensional analysis. And I was like, oh yeah, we can go into the whatever you want, man. But we can so I start, and we get this like back and forth going for a brief minute. He's like, okay, hold on. Let me ask you a few questions. And the whole tone of it changed. It was really fascinating. And I don't know whoever's going to watch this video, but Jordan certainly has like a well-crafted persona, and in that moment, he participated in a way that was like I've never seen on most of his videos. He related personal things about his life I won't share at the time, and he was deeply interested in why it is I was working on the problem. And then what ultimately would become is like he would introduce me to Daniel Schmachtenberger. They call him Schmachte, old Schmachte.
I had hopes for him, honestly.
Yeah, dude, we could.
We'll get there, I guess. But you're
rabbit
talking to him at this point.
Yeah. I had a brief phone call with him once, and he was very kind, but also I have deep reservations about some of the things in the way that happened, and later on.
Good morning to South of Africa, Dolly and I, mine. Welcome.
Awesome, South Africa. Hold on a second. Okay. All right.
Did you just see how long this has already been?
I'm not looking. No, I was another message from someone else. Yeah, I can't. I'm basically in the memory portal, so I have no sense of time.
Good. Perfect. Stay there.
All right. So Jordan Hall, this reaction fascinated me.
Because he was curious about why you had been motivated to become involved.
Well, what was really interesting was I had begun to rebuild something that Zach Stein had been working on out of Harvard with.
Out of all the cast of characters you've mentioned so far, I think I'd actually like that guy.
I do too. Yeah. And we have a really interesting overlap in an inverted sense. Like his wife has an autoimmune disease. Okay, sorry.
Let's not. But you started you turned out to look to the other guy.
Reapers, don't clip that.
It looked like you were picking up where Zach had left off on some sort of project.
Yeah, he had worked on some stuff under the names of Lectica and Uplift. And I looked into some of this later, and it was kind of vaguely similar. It was in the ballpark, but it was not like to the degree to what I was working on. But there was some resonance. Anyhow, he pointed me to it, and I would eventually have discussions with Zach at some point later on. Ta Sandy. And we would talk about some interesting things, but I do think he has some important things to say to help craft education in the time between worlds. If you want to look up one of his essays, it's really, really nice. Which is ultimately what I was focused on. That's it. As I was trying to understand how it is I could insert my children into a place where they could understand the world in a way without having. I kind of wanted to help save them from the depth of the trauma that I experienced, but also not completely. Like I wanted to give them just the ability to have an anchor where they could return to it if they needed to. There were lots of times in my life when I didn't feel like I had that. Anyhow, that was like a deep motivational purpose for understanding more. And all right, so I was shocked, actually. Like a couple of things happened to me in a very brief period of time. Like I was really shocked that I was working on stuff that was equivalent to these other guys' projects. And then I ran into a friend of mine here at FSU, Florida State University, who's in the robotics and artificial intelligence department. And the stuff that I was working on, like path algorithms, was the same stuff that they were working on in his lab, trying to figure it out. And like I had rediscovered like something that they like some efficiency improvement that they had found. And this shocked me. Hey Janice and everyone else. Someone take that. Yes, this guy's got a lingo. Yeah, no, it really shocked me that I was working on this stuff. I'm like, the way that I conceive of myself, in a sense, is well, I mean, the crown thing, which is kind of an amusing nod to it. But I really, a lot of times, I identify as just a guy from the middle of nowhere, right? Like I was born in Tallahassee, Florida.
At least it's on the coast, pal. No.
Is it? Well, we call it the armpit of Florida. It's right in the crook there. Which is so much.
And now, like this guy that, like you're working with agents, as far as you can tell. How exciting!
Exactly. Right. No, well, that's what I felt like. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? What is actually going on here? Why are they recruiting people? What are they looking for? What are they doing? So I started looking behind that, and well, what I realized was,
so what it was is like the shock of like, I'm a nobody and I'm working on the same stuff these people are. What are they up to?
Sort of, yeah. Well, I wanted to know why. So, like, I'm a smart guy. I know that. Like, I tested myself continuously against a lot of people. I'm a smart guy, but I'm not one of the smartest, right? Like, I'm not the dudes that are working on this stuff. I'm not. Like, I've never had ambition in my life in the way that they have, which is what's a necessary prerequisite for like the leading edge of defining the technology and technique space. In a sense, I actually found out later that's not entirely true. I operate in a different modality that I didn't know was a real thing. The modality of like magic, which is I guess people hear that word differently.
Interesting.
Yeah,
like that's a function of intelligence, is the mode you operate at.
Well, it's how you transform imagination into something that is either worthwhile or not. Is the question. So. Yeah, I whatever it is that I seem to do without even thinking about is that I seem to draw people into worldviews because I'm able to visit them there. That's what it is I found out that I'm able to like live with them there. I go where people are, wherever they are. I can be there with them. And so I don't know exactly. I mean, I can talk endlessly about how I think that's actually happening. But it's like a radical empathy.
I'm just trying to get to the part of the story where I'm in it.
Yeah. Of course. So you have this capacity somewhat too. I don't know if you recognize it in the same way, but conspecifics is a perfect example. All right. So what I got clued in on was that there are a few threads that were occurring in the culture that were predominantly small select groups of people who had predefined ideas about how the world should look, and they were attempting to influence the world
in those directions.
Yeah, in those directions. And that is, of course, the case as always, right? But these particular people happen to be effective along a certain dimension that was meaningful to me because I could see it.
And that dimension was
complexity theory. And also it just happened to tie up with my own history as a Mormon in an interesting way. So because one of the solution states that's defined by this shadowy cabal, let's say, and we don't even
no, sir, we shall not. The only shadowy cabals we talk about around here are the ones we thank for making all of this possible. Thank you, Shadow Cabal.
Hallelujah.
And these other people you're talking about, we'll call them, let's call them the Foundation.
Sure. Although I do love that series. I think it was Asimov. Yeah. Harry Seldon. All right. So what I determined was there's a lot of people trying to play some funky games, and so I kind of saw what they were doing, and I realized that I could. What's best for you? I realized that I could even though in a sense my body had betrayed me at the time, and it would take a few years before I kind of recovered a lot of the health of it once I realized that a lot of it was due to diet. I spent a lot of time in the intellectual, like abstract space, and what it became was community building, right? So and that coincided with the introduction of Peterson. And so what I saw in that moment, and that was of course part of the way that I received this kind of visionary experience from the white portal, that there was an enormous amount of like potential energy in young men, right? Because they were all conceiving of this like, well, what do I do? Right? It's the path problem. Where do I go? What do I do? And I saw it, and then I saw it starting to coalesce around Peterson in this really strange way, because I found him as a beautiful synthesis and maps of meaning on his YouTube channel before the Bill C16, before he was a cultural icon.
Yeah, but like the Bill 16 thing had hit, but a friend of mine sent me Maps of Meaning 9.
Right around that time, yeah.
And I was like, boy, howdy, if I can learn what all the shrinks are being taught, then I can probably apply it to my own cognition better than they can, because I have better hardware. But see how that turned out.
Yeah. Yep. Well, so what I decided ultimately was whatever work I might be able to be. I really felt like that. I was really like in a humble mood. I felt like a servant is what it was. I was looking for a way to serve the world, and so I tried to serve these guys in a sense that were working on problems that I thought were important. But what I started to find out was there's all this intertwined influence. So even if like 2 or 3 people within this web of influence I identify as people that I resonate with and trust, doesn't matter. You know, it's like 1 oar out of 80 oars on a ship. You're not really changing much. And that's just generally true for most of the already instantiated structures, right? So what I ultimately in kind of a meta perspective realized was, no matter what strategies people are employing here, they're almost all doomed to failure. Like in these moments, like when everything, when the available energy it surpasses the ability to search the space of that question of what path do I follow, that's when you get chaos. Because there's no limitation. So it's the abundance cycle just ramps it up into insanity. That's where we are now. It's about to get so much crazier, by the way. Like, you know this, of course. So much crazier. And yeah, so I saw all this in that white hole, right? Like that's what unfolded over the weeks. And it was such a beautiful way to think about how I might engage with the world. And then all these really synchronistic things followed, right? And then what happened was Peterson, and I was like, oh man, look, they're meeting on Discord. So I went into the Peterson Discord and I got to know people, and I interacted, and I got the sense of the character of who those kids were. All the while, like trying to be a single dad, just in my off time, like trying to relate to what was going on. And I did relate a whole lot. And then for Vakey, like jumps on the coattails of Peterson with his Maps of Meaning, or Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, the version there.
Right.
Dude, great. He just copies it, right? It's like, that format worked.
I think he did that before.
Slightly, not really, but he was in front of a whiteboard, right? And he's like in a little tiny lecture room, is off angle. No. He absolutely altered the format as a response to Peterson's success, and he's done that each time. If you take a look, his latest endeavors are influenced potentially by like Bishop Barron in fact, I think even so. It's really interesting. He's got an adept team. I've met with him. I think so. They're part of a strategy. They're part of a strategy, and that's what I was.
So yeah, this is you end up on his channel twice. So finding him leads somewhere.
Well, so
Or him
the
launching
the
thing.
route for that was more circuitous though, because after Peterson, what happened was I got wind of Weinstein, and Weinstein was
What does
making.
wind of Weinstein smell like?
Well, oh man, it's very kosher, whatever it is.
Was it like that he was doing the portal, launching the portal at the time, or?
Yeah, exactly right. So he had launched the portal, and so I showed up.
And the portal Discord.
The portal Discord, exactly right, because I had already been in the Jordan Peterson Discord, and I was immediately just absolutely hooked. It was so dramatic. What was going on there was fascinating. What
was going on there that fascinated you?
All right. What was fascinating was he was engaging in a kind of parallel attempt to steal the culture as John Vervaeke, but he had his own MO, his own pattern, right? And I got knee deep in it, right? I was observing it from the inside. He had all of these pre-planned methodologies for attempting to create a movement out of scratch. It was very religious. Like he had a religious text. I mean, he was very upfront about all this. He described it in these ways. He had a religious text. He had like song and dance he was trying to create, community feeling. He called it the book, the wall and the tome. Or the tome, the wall, and the
I don't know. It sounds like it'd be fun.
Memorable. I can't even recall it. Yeah. Oh man, but I'm gonna kill it. So anyhow, I earnestly attempted what usually happens is I move into a space and I kind of can't help myself. So, so I stood up and I was like, hey, like I think I know what you're doing. Let me try to help you. So I organized some stuff, right? I played around with what he was trying to do, and I saw that ultimately what the conclusion that I came to is that most of it was a smoke screen. It was like it was kayfabe. Like this is what it like. It's so beautiful the way he does this.
I hate that word so much.
I know. It's like when I heard the first time,
layer cake.
Where did that come from? Like where did that even like? There are some plausible origin stories for it, but
it's psychological warfare against me, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, my favorite interpretation is kayfabe is a weird amalgamation of like K fabuloso or something, like how fabulous, right? Like how fabulous is that's my best interpretation. Like kayfabe is it's a weird thing, but
the word itself doesn't mean anything. So I like calling it the layer cake of lies.
Sure. Yeah. Delicious lies. Delicious lies. Absolutely. Where everyone knows that they're all lies, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't actually influence.
Not everybody. That's the thing about it, right?
Oh,
whether or not you can tell it's a lie determines what your knowledge compartment is.
Okay, that's a good point. At a certain layer. No, you're absolutely right. I'll grant that at a certain layer, but I'm going to go one layer deeper. I'm going to say all conscious beings know when they are deceiving themselves. Period. So there's a minimal amount given consciousness, and I can talk about the way that I think that it's a composition of convergent and divergent, like Fourier transforms on like incredibly complicated topological manifolds of like quantum edge defined structures. So it's very like complicated, but ultimately what you say is like oh god, that was completely irrelevant, wasn't it? All right. Hold on. We're gonna go back. Oh, I knew I was gonna do this. Okay.
No, I like it. I like the point that, hey man, maybe we all really deep down know when we're lying to ourselves.
No, I know we do. I absolutely know we do.
There is some disagreement in the hive mind.
Good. Come in. Disagree. Let's disagree. So what I would say is, all right, so even the person disagrees with me, I'm just gonna pull a really cheap move, because what I'm gonna say is there's a part of you which is attending to what even you can't see. And it's recording exactly what you're doing. And it has an intelligence which is deeper and broader and older than you could ever even begin to imagine in the egoic sense of your understanding of the world. And that is, in fact, what drives the self-destructive tendencies associated with the inversions of the shadow. That's what's going on there. In a very, very complicated way, the distributed collective intelligence of human beings and their shadows somehow corresponds to this, like, I'm going to invoke Hegel, but he doesn't really deserve to be invoked, perhaps. But this dialectic, this Hegelian
He
dialectic.
gets the credit for that dialectic. The
Whatever. We all love the Germans, right? Okay. Okay. All right. Verbeke. Okay. So
we've reached the 2.5 hour mark and get to do another branding break before we return to Verbeke. Congratulations, everybody. This is the GrimGriz and Tyler stream. Engineering a little TLC is what I called it. And have a minute or so. Well, it appears that it's going to take him more than a minute, so I'll take this opportunity to remind you that now available is Beholder on the tank. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the fabulous Beholder that you know and love is now available on this beautiful pink tank, and one that's not also cut for women. Meanwhile, oh wait, I think he's back. No, not yet. Son of a he's to the Verbeke part. Let's play some of this.
Oh, man, I'm here.
Come here.
We have a Trinity, you know, and then right, and then you have the saints, and then you have the church, and you're supposed to see the whole thing, right? Christ is at the center, but Christ is not the sole, right? Christ is married to the church, for example. The church is his body, right? You're supposed to see a deep co-identification between the representation of the wise individual and the wise body. You're supposed to see them as deeply belonging together.
Supposed to be broken.
You're about to say something important, but before you do, I wanted to show everybody in the audience, this is how John Verbeke began his trolling of me. He said, you know what, guys? I'm going to put this picture of like 3 horses' asses behind myself and see if anybody can make the connection. No, well, wait, now you're not there anymore. He was back for a second, but then I played this. So let's see what he said to Verbeke in this fascinating moment.
The wise body. You're supposed to see them as deeply belonging together.
Supposed to be broken into pieces and decentralized and distributed.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the notion that's I think that's what the whole sacramental notion was supposed to teach. If I'm horribly mistaken, I'm
Well,
not
the
sure.
idea is, yeah, you're supposed to. The sacrament is you. Yeah, the idea is you break it up and you distribute it. So that's the differentiation because
Yeah.
you're right. But then everybody does it together, which is then the communitas, the drawing together.
Right.
So the idea is you reach out in differentiation to meet people where they are, right? But then you're supposed to draw them together so that they can afford, right? That third.
You reach out to people where they are and draw them together so that they can afford the beautiful Behold the tank you've made available on your channel. Oh, wait, you're back now. Good, welcome back. Oh,
Well,
I can't sell it anymore. We got to get some more conversation now.
Yeah, well, let's descend into some drama too. So, I mean, what you're displaying there is partly a good demonstration of why I love Vervaeke. I loved coming into contact with him. There's something.
He gets excited, is why he's so
very
lovable.
excited. Yeah, exactly. He's very excited by the knowledge that supplements his motivation, his project. Right, that's what he gets really excited by, and by the feeling of being in agreement with people in dialogos. And that's what I felt with him, right? That's what and I tried to cultivate it with him. And so I wanted to help him engage with this field of potential in the young men, the disaffected young men of the world, right? Because I had a sense that it could go very quickly off the rails, right? That typically in history, disaffected young men were utilized by a lot of people in power to do a lot of really wicked things. And I had a moment where I saw something that I thought might be quite possible, and it needed to be diverted in a sense. So so because I saw that, I needed to convey it as like a visual image. So I became obsessed with teaching myself how to compose music on digital audio workstations, DAWs. I got Fruity Loops at first. That's what I worked on.
Okay, so just to be clear,
yeah,
you determined that it needed to be visual, so you immediately started making music.
Oh, did I do that? Yeah, I said it that way, didn't I?
But the music was visualized, so we understand.
Can I say this real quick? Can I say this? The most beautiful thing I've heard in the past decade. Ready? Are you ready? And this is by Robert Edward Grant, I believe. I mix his name up all the time. I'm so sorry, Robert. He's mostly a quack and a kook. but this phrase, I can't find any earlier reference to it. Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Light is the music we cannot hear, and music is the light we cannot see. Come on.
That's
okay.
We call that a panty dropper.
That's I'm wet. I don't know about you. All right. So from the key of that conceptual space right there, what we can determine are orthogonal ways of representing the world, like actual differences that nevertheless correspond. And that was that taught me something about symmetry. And oh man, there's so many. The problem with this is this story is too complex. I get so lost in it. That ran me into a compatriot, a la Vervaeke, Jordan Hall, and then
Schmachterstein. You've mentioned
not Schmachtenberg, and we're introducing
Forrest Landry.
Forrest Landry, thank you. Oh man, right on the tip. Thank you. And his theories, which are fascinating, and I urge people to go take a look at him. And he deserves a lot more attention in that sense. But he, like many people, struggles with a way of conveying his ideas to the world because he himself is not a perfect vessel for them. Nevertheless, the utility of the ideas and the way that they help shape our space, I think, is vital. So his metaphysical system is really important. I it's not because it's perfect, but it teaches a lot about the nature of reality. Anyhow,
to him, or what was that? Just running into him?
yeah. Well, I mean, I started to like circle around all these spaces, right? So yeah, I started having conversations with him via some others, and like Voicecraft and Tim Adelin and a few, and he ended up trying to gather some people around him, but I ended up having some disagreements ultimately because, like most very intelligent men who are systematizers, he conceived of his like image of the ideal as perfect, and that all men should kind of conform to it. Like, naturally, I'm depicting to you the best of all possible worlds. I mean, who would disagree with that? That's like, that was the underlying message that he was sending, but he was not recognizing. He was thinking all of this perfect systematizing was going to lead to this, but at the very basis of that, it's still people making choices. And I would always ask them, like, Forrest, all of that's great. Like, what you just said was beautiful metaphysically. I was like, that's great. How do you convince your neighbor to do that? Like, how do you do that, Forrest? And it was like, and he would get so upset with me. Eventually, he kind of kicked me out of their weekly meetings. So I stopped going. And
that's when someone kicks you out of the weekly meeting, the appropriate move is to no longer go.
Yeah, well, sometimes I go back. I did go back once, and because I do that. All right, so that's good. Well, that's good. That we'll loop that back in.
Had you already arranged for him and Viveki to talk at this point? Because as I recall, when I met you,
yeah, there was a broadcast. Yeah. It was just okay. Right. Yeah,
so we're almost to the point where I'm in the story, guys. It's very exciting.
Yeah, right around that time, absolutely. Okay, all right. So right around that time is when I became disillusioned with the idea, because what happened was, in my discussions with Tim Adelin of Voicecraft, shout out to Tim. Hey, Tim. Love you.
Hey, Tim.
Who I went and spent some lovely time with in Australia. It was extraordinary. We decided that partly what needed to occur in order for the conceptual space to be defined well is that you need to introduce certain ideas and their like propagators to each other, so that the overlap of that makes something meaningful that's useful to the space overall.
Creates a path for the lightning.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So you're bringing together two fields of identity, and then if they can find a connecting point, then what they do is they develop a temporary lingua franca, which is a border speak, right? It's like they start to identify similarities, and they engage in the act of translation, and that's fundamentally the process of what consciousness is doing in terms of, again, that orthogonal separation of existence. So all right, so
you're running around, whereas I opt to like pick one camp and give them my efforts. You appear to have been doing more of a Red and Shawshank and getting a lay of the whole flotilla.
Yeah, and in some sense, you can think of it as like if I'm overly like ego, or if I'm overly subjective from it, I would, a student perpetually in search of a master. You can also think of it that way. I'm looking for someone to show me anything at all that makes me go, wow, something like that's undeniable.
And in search of that, you find various different camps, which gives you a contextual awareness most of us lack with regards to the overall scene.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. And that seems to be my specialty, right? Like I'm able to synthesize a great deal of like large scale patterns, like meta patterns. I'm really, really good at that. And then I'm also really good at like constructing them together in novel ways. We can get to that, but that was demonstrated at Jordan and what ultimately brought me into this space. Why they wanted to utilize me, so to speak, right?
That's
Which
what
was
it felt like when you came around where I was working. Was it?
Yeah. So I had completely divested myself of this. So he invited me out to California, Jordan, right? He said, "Hey, come out to California, meet the people here." Like I told him I had 2 kids, right? He was like, "But we need you out in California." I was like, "Well, maybe I can figure it out." And then I had a conversation with Schmachtenberger, which kind of turned me off just a little bit. And then I started to learn about a lot of things that made me, oh man, there's so much of this. Wow. Okay. At the same time, I actually had, I can't place them exactly. It was either FBI, it could have been Texas Marshals, a couple actually came to my house, wire and all, trying to get me to say I was against the US government. Like, I'm not kidding. It was phenomenal, the kind of the sequence of events. It was post Christchurch shooting in New Zealand, and since I was hanging out in Discord, the feds flooded it, and somehow one of them got wind of what I was doing in some space, and they attached, and they were like, "Wow, hey, look, this guy's he might be some kind of leader of a movement or something. I'm gonna see what he's pumping up to." And wow, he got here, and I was like, "What is going on?" It's another like eye-opening moment. Left his coat here. Okay. Demanded that I give him some material. Demanded it. He's like, "Come on, Tyler, you got to give me something." It's like, you want to gather people together and you want to fight against you got to fight against this corrupt nation. You got to do something about it. I was like, right. Let's slow down there, little buddy.
Fight against this corrupt nation, sir. Our forefathers put the Article 5 in the Constitution for just this sort of thing. There's no reason for us to fight against it when we can fix it from within.
Yeah, shout out to
whoever
Phil
Elliot Rosewater is.
Yeah.
Whoever Elliot Rosewater is says temporary autonomous zone pinball between the pillars of Jachin and Boaz, which is Masonic references as far as I can tell. And remember, folks, don't be afraid of the number of vertebrae in your spine.
No, don't, because that changes over time as they fuse. So
what?
And you don't want to hear that because it ruins the perfect metaphor. And it's different. It's different for different people too. But most people fall underneath a certain amount, but so we wind up with different amounts of bones in the body.
Curse it. My whole theory.
Yeah, I know. It sucks. But all right. So I found this out. It's interesting enough. Like, I mean, why isn't pi 3? Why is it, in some sense, pi is a measure of the curvature or the relationship between the diameter and the circumference, right? So it's a relationship between the distance between, so the dimensional distance between the center and the circumference and its actual perimeter, right? So why is pi 3.141592653579329? Why is that? Why is it?
I'm pretty sure it's because of how lyrical it is when you say it.
Oh, maybe, but like it's. I think it's a definite. So it's a parameter. It's a parameter function in the same way that we've discovered in terms of like the standard model. It's these predefined functions in terms of like curvature, in terms of not just curvature, in terms of like an Einsteinian like gravity tensor or something. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, I mean, the fundamental notion of the idea of the relationship within geometry is defined by this thing, right? So it's like the rules themselves being constructed in this way.
Yeah, I think you're just trying to distract us from your involvement with agencies with this pie nonsense because we're trying to do your backstory.
Yeah, okay. You're gonna have to keep me anchored. Remember? All right.
I am. That was me doing that.
Okay, good. John.
Went out to some guy in
Okay,
Australia's
all right.
house. No. You went to Australia and just
all right.
you and that guy.
No. We got to back up. We got to back up. Okay, we got to back up. Yep. So I got involved with Weinstein server first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I did a lot of work there. I really did. But ultimately, what happened with Weinstein, and this is the more important part, and this we're going to get to this trajectory real quick, is there were a number of people who we identified as trolls. That is, their sole objective seemed to be to sow discord and to destroy any attempt to produce anything within the community, and that included like argumentative behavior, sowing seeds of like reputational harm in the background. It culminated with like some of the more paranoid people, and ultimately the guy that would kind of destroy it all from the inside, going directly to Eric Weinstein and saying, "Hey, like there's all these people out to get you, and I'm the only one that can protect you, and let me do it. And I'll make your website for you." And like he and like two other people became this like close coterie of Eric Weinstein. But in the process of that, the rest of the community was absolutely destroyed. There's a whole lot of drama to that. And yes. Tyler, have you considered writing a book? I have, in fact, trying to document it.
Now, I gotta warn you about Dolly. This person always asks other people if they've considered writing a book, and I have no evidence that they actually read books at all.
Beautiful. Okay, good. This needs a book treatment, though. It does. Otherwise, I'm going to ramble forever. And maybe if I write it down, I'll stop rambling about it eventually. But
if I write a book, you got to buy it and read it, Dolly. That's all I'm saying.
Whoa! I just realized, Jesse, are you still here? Holy cow! Are you in? Jesse,
I might be getting you to the interesting part.
We might be getting the interesting part. Yeah, I mean, if he's still here, probably type something in chat.
You got the private chat over on the right, man. If you want to.
Do I? Oh, everybody. I do. Look at that.
You got the co-host powers. You can highlight comments and stuff. I was talking to him.
Whoa, it's too much. It's too much power. Which is a relevant, pithy anecdote. But okay.
Do it, Zurich.
So I became ultimately what I became disenchanted with was there was an interaction between Vervaeke and Forrest Landry, which illuminated my understanding with regards to the nature of coordination in the background. How it is that
illuminated your understanding of it. What did that illumination reveal, sir?
Not all things were as in agreement as I thought they had been in the background. So there was some
people had reasons they couldn't agree to things that they didn't weren't obvious to everyone. Like, I can't agree to that. I can't tell you why I can't agree to that.
Yeah, well, so this got complicated. I tried to figure this out, and we're talking about lots of imperfect information here. Okay. And it's a lot of it's speculation because you can't ever pin some of this stuff down, but there are fundamental deep disagreements in terms of their strategies they have in the background. But also these things are coming out, so the total plan itself is staggered, right? So it's not just let's just enact it all at once.
We have phases, gentlemen, phases.
Yeah, let's pretend we haven't been talking in the background about what we expect to happen, and that we haven't coordinated this. We haven't been conspiring to do this. But these people in the corner and that are participating in these discussions and partaking in this cultural movement, what they're partaking in is it's a channel of knowledge and discussion, which it's been defined and cultivated by a number of relatively small group of people that's been in the background since as near as I can tell, about 2008. Between 2008 and 2012 was when we really started to probably craft majority of that strategy. But it's been going back a long time before that. And I became very disenchanted with it because what I saw was irrelevance is what it was. It was like I noticed a lot of
Like
irrelevant
energy into irrelevance.
Yeah, exactly. Which is the only thing I can really pay attention to, is because I can't know exactly what I'm talking about or what you're talking about. Like, none of us are actual experts on what reality should be if we haven't already seen it, right? It's all kind of up in the air. So when I'm listening to people talk about things that none of us really know what we're talking about, like, that's really what I'm kind of paying attention to, these more subtle cues. Oh man, I feel like okay, hold on, give me a second.
I will give you more than a second. We're nearing top of the third hour, so let's highlight quickly that Dally has wrote one actually. Give us the link. I will read that. And often to people I see potential in, but also out of curiosity, because I would love to read their book. And let me find what I'm going to play for people. It's going to be this actually. Boop.
I always pay attention to what happens at the back of my mind, to the bottom of my mind, let's say. If you watch what happens in your imagination while you're speaking, while things are happening to you, you'll see little dreamlike fragments. They're not in words. They're really more like brief dreams. And I thought this was the dark part of me. If I wanted to sick my internet trolls on Channel 4, then there'd be nothing but broken windows and riots.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The way of life is to be free and beautiful. Free and beautiful. Free and beautiful. You have lost the way. You are not machines. You are men. You have lost the way. You are not machines. You are men. Men. Victims of the system. Do not despair.
Remember, Embody.
There is no agency. We want
what's best. And once again, I have muted myself. Ha ha! Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the thing. It's engineering a little TLC with Tyler and GrimGriz. I'm GrimGriz. That's Tyler. We're almost to the part of the story where I'm involved, and I'm very excited. It only took us 3 hours to get here. That's a +2 to the next saves ups. Thank you. Thank you. And that video you just saw was apparently something he's made on a channel he has. I've just become aware of. If you're going to say things, you're going to have to unmute. Apparently, it's contagious.
It is contagious. I have channels. I got channels galore.
You may have a lot of channels, but I have much more.
And I hope we take a look at After Dark. I implore.
Yeah, there's some stuff there.
All right.
So you're trying to coordinate between Landry and Vervaeke, when all of a sudden you realize there's things under the surface that I have not recognized before. Forces
Correct.
and places and plans and things going on, and I am now disenchanted. Oh,
Yeah.
but wait, a shining light on the beacon of my horizon. 'Tis
GrimGriz.
This is not a lost
savior
cause.
of the internet.
There is still hope. Rakau is still here. Thank you, Rakau. Your view time nourishes me and this channel.
Yeah. So I realized I had some more learning to do. It coincided with some other more personal parts of the story. It might be relevant at some point, but it's hard to say when.
If you were not operating solo when your team extended its help to this budding channel who had been abandoned by the respectable member in pursuit of his own goals, and we were trying to do it right as a channel because there was already money coming in, and so we tried to form some sort of system such that a channel could be nourishing to an entire community of people, despite being helmed by a single individual. And you consulted on that before I had to part ways.
Yeah, there were a lot of threads falling apart at the time, and it's the nature of like what's occurring right now in general.
What do you mean?
Disunity. There's fragmentation and schisming all the time.
It's as if everybody's trying to coordinate on a thing called Discord.
Exactly. It's so beautiful, right? It's so beautiful. But in fact, that the irony of that is what drove me to try harder to figure out how to get people to work together. And it's still there. It's just I can't give it up. However, so what I came to realize was, and this is in association with the work that I had done to build this platform, what I initially, and I guess still call the Metagora, like the name of which came to me when I was so shortly after I had experienced that
the white portal.
The white portal, yeah. So I recognize that most of our considerations are going to have to occur at the meta layer, just because of the nature of the playground that we built for ourselves, the internet. And in order to get people to come back down out of the clouds, you had to construct some kind of portal for them, right? Then,
or at least, yeah.
There, yeah. And so I basically just designed this thing, and then Eric Weinstein shows up at the portal, like podcast, and there was such an enormous number of synchronicities involved with that, but I ended up being a mod in his server, and like, you know, having weekly discussions with him and finding out this is more Disenchantment, that he really had absolutely no interest in what he was saying. Like, what he was saying was the kayfabe. Something else is going on. So you look a little bit higher than Eric Weinstein. Just a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
Start asking some questions. We don't have to go into that now. And so I decided, I think around that time, that that I wasn't going to try to join up with pre-existing strategies. Things like that. That rather what I saw around me when I was paying attention to the people that I was hanging out with all around the internet was that they all had pieces of what they kind of collectively could see as like how they wanted to relate to each other, how they wanted to make sense of the world. But they were separated, right? Like they're like.
Can you break that one down to a specific example?
Yeah, well, you know, the nature in which people silo on the internet, like the way the left and the right segment in their own little camps. But it's not just the political spectrum that does that. It's all sorts of little niches that do.
Every divisive wedge issue is.
It doesn't even have to be divisive. It could it could just be just by virtue of the thing that they're interested in pulls them away from someone else, right?
Mm.
You don't even notice it. That's in fact a neutral difference.
Quite often happens in romantic relationships these days.
These days, right? Exactly. So that's a problem. That's actually a real problem that we have to confront. That we're not we're not even remotely prepared to deal with. But I'm jumping ahead. So I decided that what I would do was try the best I could to pay attention to the most interesting, profound, resonant people I could find that were demonstrating some aspect of signals that I've been paying attention to, that other people have been paying attention to as necessary parts of, well, the zeitgeist, right? Like, what is it that's necessary for this moment, this little cultural moment? And it's deeply related to these cyclical processes and what keeps recurring. One of those processes is this. People need a figurehead. They need a scapegoat, or they need a king, someone to blame, right? Or someone to listen to. And that's like a really persistent pattern. Quantum information, just I'm reading the side chat here. Yeah, I'm sure we could probably talk about a lot of that stuff upcycle. I could probably say some words that.
But stay where you're at. I like it here.
Okay. All right. So what I realized was you could probably, if you could introduce the right people to each other from the bottom up, or rather, really, it's from kind of the middle out in an interesting way. You could assign this relationship between self-interested parties in like a healthy way, so that the total interactions between all these different self-interested parts like synergize to a unified whole, right? Now, that's no different than what keeps happening over and over again. So like the United States of America, right? Why are they united? It's a sense of needing to unify under some central authority. And I mean, I could go into why that happens based on.
Well, there's just just my first response would be like, there's the pre-existence of other central authorities. The
Well,
most likely response is one of our own, so that we're not
yeah,
dominated by the other ones.
yes, but it's all so easily propagated because the central authority that we're all subject to is our own subject. So we're already accustomed to being subject to something, right? So that's the paradox of that. And it gets really, really like projected outwards in weird ways. And that's what constitutes like the political layer. So it's kind of like the distributed terror management theory, perhaps. All right. So I thought, well, maybe rather than like co-opt or go along with or play with these other threads which seemed kind of rotten from within, even though they were sparkling on the outside, sepulchers and whatnot. I thought it would be much more interesting to just listen to the extraordinary people that I've met along the way. So that's why I started like really paying attention to. And along the way, some drama happened. And that drama was related to the way in which these small groups of people kept fragmenting over and over again. And it wasn't like it wasn't like a natural kind of neutral falling apart or like the ordinary frictions. It was like a concerted, coordinated effort by individuals to destroy any kind of communal effort. I
So you
experienced.
started seeing rubble and awake, and you looked, and there was a motorboat responsible.
Yeah. Correct. And in general, and this is what is interestingly enough get tied right back to my ex-wife and why it is she kept causing problems, essentially what it is like when you don't need them. Why do people do that? So there are a number of people that that act both intrinsically and extrinsically motivated reasons, right? But they act solely as a means of testing the integrity of the space. We call these people trolls. That's what I call them, right? The only thing they're supposed to do is test the integrity of the space. And the way that they test it, it's very, very complicated sometimes, very nuanced, but most of the time it's just like pure opposition. It's just make subdivisions, make schisms. Now, in the great and last final days of this apocalyptic scenario we're all about to live through, the self-awareness scale is through the roof. And so a la Bernays in that trajectory, we've learned like how to manipulate minds and how to think of these things, although that thread's a lot older than Bernays. Much more. Oh, wait. Oh, there was something else. This was the primary difference that I had in these other camps. How is it that you invite people to play the game that you're playing? Or that you want to play? Because what I saw in these differences that were occurring in these other camps was that they were attempting to utilize they were putting lipstick on a pig, right? Or too much perfume. It's a little too much perfume. And I started to wonder why. So, and in fact, I became deeply suspicious of all things beautiful, interestingly enough, including myself. You want to get real psychological about that. How is it that we relate to ourselves? Like, how do we think about ourselves in terms of when you look in the mirror? What do you relate to? How do you relate to that? And that, interestingly enough, they gave me this really strange insight with regards to how body dysmorphia functions. Like in the way that it seems to collapse into a shrinking or a enlarging of size, right? It's like I need to shrink in size. That's, bulimia and its ilk, or yeah.
I don't know.
Eating
That's not been my experience with the body dysmorphia, but go ahead.
Well, the other one is asymmetry. The other one's asymmetry, and then so you have expanse, collapse, and then asymmetries, which is just the combination of those two things. Like one needs to grow to meet the other. All right, but that's another point related to the consciousness and not necessarily important here. All right. The significant point I guess I'm trying to point out here of all of this is that my role here and what brought me to you and what brought me to trying to interact with a number of people in this space is that I have gleaned, I have seen in a sense, from a certain angle, that the combined interests and necessities of our times, and the skills and capacities and just the pure awesomeness of what's actually occurring if you see it all at once, that in this space, in this people, in this time right now, something really cool is about to happen.
I can't resist myself,
No. You're in charge here, Grim. Yeah.
So you sense there's something.
Yeah.
Building toward a climax in this space.
Like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So this is one of the things that Jordan said to me. Is like, actually, it was in that. No, that's right. It was in an email chain later with Daniel. That this is a kind of a Close Encounters of the Third Kind thing. So what's happening is like, if you want to, I guess I could try to explain some of the mechanisms behind why this occurs. But you essentially have these pattern recognition devices we call brains. It's overly reductionistic, but for this purpose, it's fine. You distribute enough of them out, and some of them are going to recognize these certain patterns, and that in their combined effort, they're going to be able to create something that's like appropriately in response to like how you can capitalize on the value of it. So like there's like, if you understand certain parts of these patterns, you can get ahead of the curve, right? So this is a weirdly interesting and deep and old pattern. It goes all the way back to, let's tie in the Christian thread, right? Because this is vital.
The external savior pattern?
Yeah, right. Because, and this is a contestant point, of course, in some parts of this, but for a very long time, we've been recognizing these patterns of the way in which the world unfolds. So you have in a troop of monkeys, you have an alpha male, right? You have a larger specimen. You have something which is the greater, the greatest. Maybe it's in contest with something similar to it, but in all these hierarchical relationships that have to do with quantity, you have these comparisons, and that naturally that seems to unfold here. Oh no! I almost the other thread. I almost thought. Oh, it almost came back. No.
So all these monkeys have a hierarchy.
No.
You got another 10 minutes before we get another commercial, man. You kick out something.
I can't think about that. No, hold on. That was such an important one too. Maybe it'll come back. All right. Okay, so let me just. Okay. Ordinarily, what we're accustomed to in most of our lives is going about acting in patterns according to those which have been dictated from both the vertical and the horizontal realms. So the people around us tell us what to do, and our deep tradition tells us what to do.
And the alpha male is the homeostasis pacemaker.
Sort of. It's actually, it seems to be a weird union between the chief and the priest. Yeah, it's actually that, which is the masculine and the feminine, which is that first subdivision which occurs between. Well, it's not actually a true duality, but that's also a completely different rabbit hole. Yeah. Okay. So it seems to me highly likely that what is actually required, so what the pattern that needs to exist that's sufficiently able to survive and then thrive in the coming circumstances, is something which is unexpected. This just also seems to be a deep pattern of reality. It comes from a place that you didn't, like, most people wouldn't expect it coming from.
It's got to be a black swan or it can't do it.
To pass through the bottleneck of catastrophe, yeah. Right, because that's basically what defines it. Because it's such a dramatic change in context that the things that you would ordinarily have predicted to survive don't work in that new context. It's only the things that were least, depending on how much of the context changes, right? If it's so dramatic, then the thing that was least like that previous context is the thing that is able to survive in the new context, a la mammals and dinosaurs or whatever. You pick a thing. But that's just the nature of the cycle and the way that it kind of purifies the adaptability function of that path exploration function of life. Wow, I feel like I've completely lost thread of the thing that I wanted to. But okay, hold on. Okay, all right.
I don't know. We got up to you and Forrest Landry and your disenchantment, I think.
No, we got further than that. We got my hopes and aspirations for the.
Oh, and then you started looking around and you decided not to invest in the schemes that were obviously already underway for quite some time, and focus your attention on the bright lights shining that weren't already attached to a scheme.
Yeah, correct. Right. The people who are recognizing these parts of reality but weren't being directed that way by pre-existing ideas, yeah, which is rare. It's very rare. But it's extraordinary when you find it, and the synchronicities just pile up on top, like Candy Mountain. And anyhow, so I'm convinced of and like we've been participating in some part of this, and there's some of it which is ramping up right about now, which I think is going to be really fruitful. But ultimately, what we're talking about is not just a convergence of ideas and like people, but it's actual spirits of like movements of desires of.
The patterns are gonna play out, and right now they're looking for pieces.
Exactly, yes. The patterns will play out no matter what they are, and as people decide which patterns they wish to engage with, this is how it works. Because it seems like, no, that's unnecessarily. We don't need to know that, do we? Why? I mean, we could explore the why. We could explore the why, but that the why doesn't necessarily change.
The why is going to be too subjective to analyze at this level.
Well, no, I mean you could go all the way down to the bottom, I think, but then you just reach an invariance, and it doesn't matter. So the actual differences in the why are the only things that matter in a sense, like in terms of your identity, because that then defines your location in the total tapestry. Because the weave itself doesn't really change, like from a certain scale, like the nature of the way that from A to B, the total history of the universe, all of the cosmos, doesn't, like, it's just one total story. But you can follow a particular unique path through it, right? And that's what you and I are doing. We're choosing. We are that thing which chose a particular unique path through it. That's what we're doing right now. And yeah, so I think the path that I'm trying to follow right now is trying to figure out how to get agreement, harmony,
synchrony,
right? Understanding, translation, like, and transmutation, alchemy between these things, such that you have a seed that is undeniably, like, generating life force, like attention wants to be a part of it, and the attention that's partaking of it feeds back into growth rather than disease, which is what we have in our typical social media environment. And I know it's possible because I can do it in small groups, right? Like, I can participate with others in small groups where this takes place. But we've extended these control structures that we've been using for a very long time out so far that the amount of force we need to keep that large structure in place just ultimately destroys the participation aspect of conscious beings, which produces a rebellion cycle, because consciousness needs, like, it only exists for choice, right? So you can't snuff it out. You can't end the story. If the story were to ever actually end, then none of this would exist. It's all contingent. So it hasn't ever ended. This like eternally, this is the story that's always been going on.
A control structure line you just dropped is so resonant with the stolen journals from God Emperor. I took away their ability to participate in history.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sick of this. Like, I really am. Like, I feel sick to my stomach with, like, how much we are missing out on because of the narrowness of the way that we've built the world, because of the success of it, and the way that it's proven its value in a very particular way. We've just become accustomed to it. But ultimately, everyone, I mean, I can poll people, like, in the depth of their being, not when, like, Gallup calls them up randomly on the phone and says, "Hey, are you satisfied with your life?" And everyone's like, "Oh, absolutely." And you press 3. And when you really get people to tell the truth about things, like, they unpack all this insanity. And strangely enough, I feel like most of it can be resolved if you just change the scale at which we're trying to control things. It's all like that very simple change can lead to an enormous number of, like, creative responses to the challenges of, like, organizing our activities together.
This is like, are you blaming it on the Island News Network effect kind of thing, where, like, the problems we're presented with are always at the scale that we can't address them?
That's part of it for sure. I mean, I'm not loading all of it on top of that, but that's well, and what's interesting about it is once you become self-aware, the fact that that phenomenon even has a name is that now that can be then utilized as a weapon, which it is. Right. So
what do you mean when you become aware it can be utilized as a weapon? It's always
when we as a human species become aware of it as a functional meme, which has an effect on culture, then it gets utilized as a weapon. So it, despair is utilized as a weapon. Lack of hope is actually fostered. It's created. And
intentional demoralization.
Yep, that's exactly right. Because it's actually better to just completely demoralize your army than it is to try to just kill a few of them at a time. Like, if everyone is depressed, don't even want to fight. Peace. That's a whole lot of pieces. Yes, it is a beautiful paradox. I agree. The paradox of divergence and convergence. But okay, so I guess partly there's a part of me that is always trying to condense things and distill things. And I know I've been rambling for
that part of you hasn't been here today.
I know I completely cut it off. Because of the nature of like everything that's going on in my life right now. I thought I'd like come in here and just kind of cut that off and just let it ramble and go.
We're good.
Yeah, okay, good. So all right, so let me try to all right, so some cautionary stuff, some hopeful stuff, some I would say this. All right. I've come to love an extraordinary number of people in the across the internet, across the globe, so many different continents. People gathering together, they don't even quite know why. But
because they know not gathering together hasn't worked.
Well, yeah, some of them are like that, but some of them are like the threads that they're following. They don't even know why they're throwing this. Like me, I started off following threads I never would have considered. Path finding algorithms, like what the. But that led me to something which is deeply vital. Flood the fighting it. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Another good example. So what I want to try to do is get a group of people together, and I think you and I are participating in some of that right now, that can construct a pattern that can coexist with the digital realm as it is right now, but ultimately leads back to kind of a renaissance, a great awakening of recreating by choice, building the culture that we want to be within. And that doesn't mean like homogenous like enforcement of that culture across the world, the globalist tendency.
But it might mean not supporting things and not like withdrawing your time, attention, and potential from things that aren't resonant with the culture you want to participate with.
Correct. Yeah. And but what we need in order to manage that though is different alternatives. And so that's ultimately the idea is we try to create a platform which is just a gathering hub that lets people filter out into these like slightly different iterations of like the most effective ways to come together, and that like you don't enforce a particular structure on any of these, but that nevertheless they communicate with each other, and that by like voluntary participation update how it is their internal governance works, or how it is their economies work. Like all of that stuff is up for play. But so it's part of a whole narrative, right? Because there's a transitional point that we have to pass through, right? Which is the catastrophic bottleneck, this ability to destroy everything and everyone that's going to exist for the minds and the bodies. The minds, of course, being through the AI, and the bodies through whatever vector you want, some genetically modified disease, drones that shoot it at you with bees or nuclear weapons, pick one. Or maybe it's a wild card. Maybe it's like a Carrington event, solar flare, or whatever. Anyhow, we need to have self-sustaining, potentially isolating communities, so they can cut themselves off from each other and isolate during quarantine events. And they need to be able to survive what is also potentially very catastrophic geological transformations of the earth. And I could go into all this stuff. It's not just idle speculation. It's just the inevitabilities of the cyclical phenomenons of nature, and we have to be prepared for them. We have to like make that part of our ultimate participation with it, like the responsiveness of ourselves to nature, our stewarding of it, and that rather than fighting each other over like what is ultimately just abstract nonsense, like a border on a map or something, or like a digit on a spreadsheet,
or a line in a book our groups disagree over.
Exactly, or the interpretation of any particular word. We can much rather serve a purpose towards these, like just far more interesting patterns of activity that we've discovered along the way, but for whatever reason, it's just very difficult to like move lineages out of these things. Nevertheless, there is a force which does it. Like there is a force which like moves men outwards and women. I mean to use that colloquially, from their stuck loops, right? That cracks open the mouth on the Ouroboros and says, "Spit your tail out of your mouth." It's bullshit. You gotta stop.
The verticality of the key in the room.
Sure, yeah, that sounds good.
Well, no, the room is your knowledge compartment, and your knowledge compartment is,
Well, it's being birthed out of an egg. It's perpetually being birthed out of every new egg. Yeah, it's every barrier, every boundary condition, every well, what it is, it's just it's the transition from the place where you have knowledge, where you that's the interior. You know how things function in this space. Past the boundary into the place where you don't know, like where you literally don't know what's out there. And that move is what, well, that's what consciousness exists for. It's like making the decisions about how to move from that place where you know to that place where you don't know. And yeah, so I've been trying to figure out how to help people do that. I guess that's what it is. And along the way, I've met some really interesting people. Some of them friends, some of them enemies. I love my enemies. I try to, but damn, some of them, ex-wives included. And I consider myself a kind of warrior, like I love a good fight. I love feeling alive. Like I love feeling like something wants to fight me over reality. Like, yeah, all right, show me.
You call this a storm?
Yeah. So, all right. I don't know if I touched on it enough, but I became.
Now you're forming secret little groups. You're pulling people out of our big, wonderful community. Oh,
thank you, Dolly. Thank you. I didn't see that.
You're not gonna highlight things. I'm not giving you co-host power anymore.
I don't ever do this stuff. Yeah,
it's fine.
I'm a terrible co-host.
What now? Are you gonna fill the spot that the GrimGriz's vacancy is gonna be once they take my channel now?
Yeah, I mean we're not gonna rely on that. That's what it is. We're gonna cross that. We're gonna cross the boundary. We're gonna cross the bridge. We're gonna take this little corner and plug it into the places that do need what's happening here. Like they need it. So I'd be like, I know people here in Tallahassee. I know people here that need access to the sense making that's taking place here on the internet. I know that. Like I know they can benefit from it. I also know
why you decided to start an estuary group.
No, that's not fair. Don't make me make fun of it. Okay, the old men. But something like it, and praise be to their efforts. Really, truly, I do wish the best for all of it.
We need information coming in from on the ground that's not coming in from the internet, and I think that's how those are going to serve the corner.
And also anything that is just attempting to explore how it is we can come together and like have joy together, like whatever it is. yeah, we just got to figure that out, because like there's so many diverse ways that we can do it, but we've got stuck in this oppositional framework for a long time now.
And oh, that's coming. That's coming.
Yeah. So a lot of my time has been spent recently at the psychological layer, trying to understand the complexities of bringing small groups together and how those things keep breaking down. Because I think that's the key, is trying to figure out how it is that you can effectively sort people together into small groups. And then when they're in those small groups, have a relatively reliable way to not be so much at odds with each other, or if they are at odds with each other, that opposition is like functionally beneficial, like to the whole thing. Like in the same way that the masculine and the feminine,
the same way as the dream catcher of optimal grip.
Yeah, of course.
Those oppositional processes.
Yep.
Well, I don't know that I've gained a whole bunch of information.
Yeah, there's some of that.
We do need to touch on the engineering a little TLC part of the title of the stream for me to feel satisfied, though.
Okay. All right. So,
I meant by that atmospheric engineering.
Atmospheric engineering.
Yeah, it's
say more. What do you mean?
Well, like certain things condense when there's certain atmospheric conditions. And what I think, at least some level, we're trying to do, both you and I have in common, is to create an atmosphere where healthy things are what condenses.
Yeah. All right. Healthy thing. So let's say healthy thing is a vision of what's possible. A healthy thing is also a healthy thing is also a deep recognition that wherever you happen to find yourself right now, wherever you're standing right now, it's an adequate place to begin. Right? If there's something holding you back, it's that idea of friction, the idea of that you cannot move forward, that you're in fact damned, is always and only like the perpetual lie of existence. That's what defines you, is belief in that you can no longer progress forward. So we collectively have to stop being identified by what people say we are, and we have to be self-defined. We have to be defined from the inside out. And so when we act together, it's not because I say you do what you need to do. It's because we are each singing together, and it's obvious as we both sing together that, I need to stand here and you need to stand over there, and like this is the chord and how it functions. It just falls into place in that way. So that's what we're going to be doing with some others in this space, is we're going to start playing around with how it is we might get those like individual notes to function together in a harmonious way.
That's fascinating, because my approach is the opposite of self-definition.
Is it?
I think so.
Well, that's interesting, because I was just
it feels as though part of my service is being a screen upon which people can project either their shadow or their golden shadow.
It's a mirror. Your mirror. Yeah. Okay, that's right. And that's why.
And by not forcefully self-defining myself in the way I think you're speaking of, it allows me to perform that function. I don't know that would remain the case should I start. I don't know. I don't even know what you mean by self-definition, I suppose.
Oh, well, Okay. Oh, that's a whole another ball of wax. We should totally explore that though, for sure. For sure. Because the nature of identity, like, how how do you know you? Like, what are you comparing it to?
Well, Dolly has asked about the golden shadow, so I want to explain.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's like when I see people I don't like, it's the parts of myself I don't like, and they are displaying them thickly. And similarly, the golden shadow is when you have a self identity that demands you don't see anything good about yourself. Everything that's good about you, you see like in other people, and that draws you to them, because it's the good in you that you can't see about yourself, and they manifest it for you. So you're drawn to them, so you can hopefully one day see the good within yourself reflected off of them.
Yeah, beautiful. Yep. And did we not get to Grimm's part in the start? We kind of touched on it, didn't we?
I threw some in there. You weren't going anywhere with it.
Okay, all right. Let me skip back over that real quick. I mean, obviously, I was immediately impressed by the things that I heard you saying, but there was also this tension between you and Merc that had to play out, and then, so I have this category of people that I meet them, and I immediately know I don't have to watch them or know anything more about them. In a sense, I'm like, I meet them like, oh, okay,
That's a Cylon.
Yeah, that. So I met you and I saw what you were doing and what you're up to. I was like, oh, okay, I'll come back and like, yeah, it's like an old friend, right? It's like, yeah, just known for a long time. So that's essentially like the undercurrent of what the signal that I've been paying attention to for a long time now is a certain kind of familiarity. You can call it a resonance, you can call it whatever it is.
I saw you in the water is what I call it.
Ah, okay. Yeah. It's to me, it's like if it's someone who can plausibly be thought of as like a past version of yourself that diverted from a choice that you would have made in the past, right? Like when you recognize that, oh yeah, that could have been me. That totally could have been me.
No. For me, it's like season 6 of Lost. It's like before I came here, before you came here, we agreed we'd meet up down here, and that's why I recognize you the way I do. But that's nothing a materialist could embrace.
No, I think that's right too, though, because again, this this is the new egg from the previous egg that we came from. Right? There's no doubt about that. So you have cohorts, you have like groups that move together. So families, they're called families.
Yeah, that terminology binds my my self expectations to way too much.
Yeah. It's a tragedy. It really is. Always has been.
Well, I refuse to do a 5-hour stream, and we're at 350. So
No. I think 4 is plenty. We can cut it off. Let's try to squeeze in the last 10 minutes.
So here we are at the last 10 minutes.
Do you have anything you want to say in conclusion?
We'll give you 10 minutes for it because we know how this stream is going.
Yeah. I'm really just trying to get whoever wants to watch this into a fatigued mindset, and then getting ready to lay the ultimate moment right about.
You had me, otherwise I would have played branding right then.
Oh, I know. Oh man.
Remember it. There is no agency. We want.
I like to grab it right when it goes in reverse. So here it is. Lay it on us. We're ready now. Go.
Mark my words. we live in the most interesting of times. And there's some extraordinary things coming, both good and bad. And now's the time to, and it's quickly approaching to no longer be that time to choose kind of like where you want to participate. Because at some point it's going to be much more difficult to freely move about, both physically and conceptually. That's what's coming.
Why conceptually?
Oh, because concepts are, I mean, like you can retreat into your imagination. Some people have that power, completely retreat. But they're, for the most part, they're tied to resources in the real plane. You have to have a book to think about them, or a space that you can inhabit them in. That's why ritual is important, liturgy, all that. But the world that we're going to be moving into is, it's going to be destroying the ability to maintain a lineage of thought in two ways. It's either going to destroy the resources necessary to uphold it, or it's going to make things so rapidly and continuously that you can't ever grab a hold of anything of consequence. So that's where we're headed. And in the middle of that, locked away, isolated from all of the insane infinities of like the edges of the Mandelbrot set, is going to be a relatively well adapted, relatively harmless small group of people, probably no less than 144,000, that somehow manages to sneak their way through and make friends along the way.
Well, even if we don't make it through, at least we made friends.
At least we gave it our best shot.
Thank you, everybody. That's us. This was a stream. We'll see you next time.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Let's gather around the campfire and sing our campfire song. Our CAMPFIRESONG.
Join us for campfire songs at the Chino Conference Campout, where we will sing classics about questing for a spiritual home, like "This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island," and hobo-related songs like "Hobo's Lullaby," "Go to sleep, you weary hobo, let the town go drifting by."
Listen to the steel rails humming. That's the hobo's lullaby.
If that's not